Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN WhatIf 2.0, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Never Got a Quirk? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. It had been 1 month since Izuku's dream was crushed. The air was warm as it whipped around him, the streets still noisy, even at night. His mother believed him to be asleep in his room, not on the roof of a tall building in the city. Numbly, he made his way to the edge, Katsuki's words echoing in his mind, "Just take a swan dive off the roof, Deku." He pulled his phone out of his pocket to text her a goodbye, but decided to put it away. He didn't want to bother her. She only pretended to care, but he knew she didn't want to have a quirkless kid in her care. His feet were on the edge now, and he was ready to jump. Ready to finally be free of this pain. Ready to be happy. "What do you think you're doing, kid?" Shoyuta didn't expect to see a child on the roof tonight. He was doing his nightly patrols from an aerial view like normal when he spotted a small, plain-looking boy standing on the edge. Several red flags were waving in his head. Quickly, he made his way over to the building, landing quietly behind the boy. "What do you think you're doing, kid?" The boy swiftly turned around to face Shoyuta, stuttering. Clearly he didn't expect to see anyone else on the rooftop tonight. The kid didn't finish his sentence, eyes glossy and threatening with tears. Shoyuta did his best to keep his emotions in check. He worked on this. Calmly he asked, "What's going on? Do you need help?" The boy looked away, refusing eye contact. He stepped forward and lowered his voice. "Please, step away from the ledge." The boy shook his head, stepping back and causing Shuta's heart to beat faster. "I'm sorry." A quiet apology before the boy disappeared from sight. The color drained from Shuta's face as he yelled for the kid, jumping into action. This was it. Izuku would finally be free. He wouldn't have to deal with the bullying every day, or the discrimination he faced back at home. Everyone he knew, his own foster siblings, told him to die. It was only a matter of time before he snapped. Falling, which should have taken no more than a handful of seconds, felt like an eternity. He looked up to see the man staring at him in disbelief. The air was harsh against his burnt uniform, loud enough to block out everything but his own thoughts. Izuku closed his eyes, ready to accept his fate. God had other plans. He suddenly felt some type of cloth surround him tightly, stopping him from hitting the ground. He looked up immediately at the man, only to see that he used his scarf to save him. Izuku was correct in his previous assumption. The man who stopped his death was none other than Eraserhead, the pro hero. Shuta's heart was beating insanely fast as he caught the kid. If he missed, if he had been half a second later, that boy would be dead. He signed up for hero work and teaching, not saving suicidal teenagers. He pulled the kid back up to the top of the building and kept him bound in his capture weapon. He looked at the street below, and surprisingly no one had noticed what just happened. He turned his attention to the kid, angry. He stopped himself before he yelled at his recklessness and changed his tone to be softer. He couldn't mess this up. He looked at the kid who was now crying. Sobbing is the better word. Shoyuta wasn't the best at comforting people, but he tried his best. He released the kid from his capture weapon and pulled him into a hug. The boy stopped for a moment, but quickly wrapped his arms around Shoyuta and gripped his shirt, sobbing into his chest. This was extremely awkward, but on some distant level he knew this had to happen. After a few minutes, the boy pulled away, wiping his red, puffy eyes. He looked up at Shoyuta. "Why would you save me? You didn't even know what I was going to do. There is always a point no matter who you are. I saved you because you deserve to live. You're just saying that. Kinda cruel to give empty platitudes, right?" His smile was resigned to some fate Shoyuta didn't know. But it was a lot for Shoyuta to maintain composure. He empathized with the boy. He knew what rock bottom felt like. "I'm not lying to you, I promise you that. Won't your parents be wondering where you are?" A strange expression crossed the kid's face. Was it pain? Envy? He couldn't identify what it was. "My parents won't be wondering. If anything, it would be a blessing to them if I didn't come back," the kid said while looking away. He was aware that some parents weren't as loving as others, sure, but for him to think they wouldn't care was something else. He didn't know this kid's name. "What's your name, kid? I think it's best I get you home as soon as I can." "Izuku. Midoriya Izuku. You can drop me off at the first floor, I know my way home." "Midoriya, I'll be honest. I don't trust you to stay here after this, and you need to get your ankle looked at. Saving you from that height wasn't a little feat. I'm going to take you home, one way or another. Either I pull you to the station and have your parents come pick you up, or you direct me to your house and I'll drop you off." The kid didn't seem to mind. After a long moment of silence, "You'll really take me to the station if I don't go with you?" He sighed. "Yeah, basically. So how do you want this to go?" Without much hesitation, Midoriya opted for the second option. Izuku would rather just walk with Eraserhead to his house than wake his foster parents up. He'd give anything to not hear their angry, sharp words directed at him. He hoped that if he succeeded, then his parents would be happy. Finally, he would have done something right to make them happy. It was extremely awkward, walking in silence. Eraserhead didn't talk much after they got off of the roof. He heard him muttering to himself, but Izuku decided to ignore it. He should be overjoyed. He's walking with one of his favorite pro-heroes. Before All Might had, well, crushed him, Eraser was easily his second favorite. His stealth was amazing, the capture weapon iconic, and his quirk is extremely useful. He basically fights quirkless, so what's not to love? "So you know who I am?" Eraser said quietly, but it was enough to break Izuku out of his stupor. Then he realized that he was muttering about Eraserhead. He's going to know how creepy he is. He was going to hate him. He knew it was pointless to save Izuku. What a letdown. Tears pricked at his eyes, but he forced them away. Izuku flinched when he saw Eraserhead's hand move toward him. His hand stopped right before he made contact with Izuku's shoulder. Sorry. I didn't mean to startle you, I just wanted to calm you down." "That's not needed." He forced a neutral expression onto his face, trying to convince himself and the hero both. Eraser stared at him with a frown. "You were hyperventilating. That's enough to worry me." He had no idea that he was hyperventilating. Thankfully, they reached the front of his house before he could say anything more. He rushed in, taking one last glance at Eraser, before quietly shutting the door behind him and ran to his room. The only reason Izuku had his own room was to stop him from spending more time with his foster siblings. Whatever the reason may be, he was grateful for the privacy. It was small and cramped, but Izuku was happy to have his own space. He quietly acted as though he hated being alone, to fool his parents into thinking it was a punishment. Even with the craziness of what just happened, he tried to sleep. He had another day of hell waiting for him, after all. Shoyuta watched as Midoriya disappeared into the house. The nameplate didn't say Midoriya, though, it said Ishida. It was strange, because Midoriya had the house key and didn't look like an intruder. He would have to do more investigating later. He turned his comms back on. "Hisashi? You still there?" Hisashi's iconic voice came through. "How's the kid? Did he get home safe?" Hisashi may be loud to the public most of the time, but when he wasn't busy announcing things he kept his yelling to a minimum. Well, he tried to. He knew when to be serious and when to be quiet. It's how he is now. "Yeah, I'm going to look into this Midoriya kid when I'm done with my patrol." He said his name's Midoriya, but the nameplate on the house is Ishida. "I'll talk to you more when I'm home." "I hear you loud and clear, Sho." Izuku didn't get too much sleep, but sometime in the night he fell asleep. He opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling. His room wasn't too decorated because of how small it was, but the few decorations he had were of All Might. When his foster parents noticed everything All Might was gone, they seemed happy. "You've finally gotten over your hero phase," they said to him. The room was bare now, with his notebooks filling up his shelves. His uniform was hanging on the front of his wardrobe, which sandwiched his desk between the wall. He laid there, reminiscing on last night. His thoughts were soon interrupted as he heard his mother's footsteps make their way up the stairs. He rushed to get up and fix his bed as he checked the time. It was 8. They were going to kill him. The door burst open as Izuku's foster mom, Izumi Ishida, yelled at him. "Izuku! What are you doing still in bed? It's 8 o'clock. You should be dressed and eating breakfast downstairs with your siblings. Jesus, I'm grateful they know how to act properly. He nodded quickly before she slammed the door shut on her way out. It truly was a shame that parents dealt with their kids this way, but he's sure that other kids don't get as scared as he does. He's just weak, right? He got dressed for school and walked downstairs to get breakfast. He didn't eat much, just yogurt. As he was leaving, he heard his mother on the phone with someone. Yes, he's leaving for school. No, not at all. She glanced at Izuku with a strange look in her eyes before turning her attention back to the phone. He left as she continued her call. Izuku was hoping to avoid Katsuki and his lackeys today. His heart really wasn't in it for getting verbally degraded. Of course, he knew he deserved it and that it was selfish to avoid it, but that's why Izuku is a bad person. Apparently, he wasn't lucky enough as he bumped into Katsuki while walking. He had spent so much time worrying about running into them that he literally ran into Katsuki. Katsuki reared his head, eyeing Izuku up and down. Watch where you're going, you useless F-. Before Izuku could say anything, one of Katsuki's friends shoved him into the ground. They scoffed, "Stay out of his way, useless B." Getting shoved into the ground forcefully hurts, but he'd take that over getting burned by his quirk. He met Katsuki when they were kids. Izuku was 4 when his parents gave him up to the system. He moved from somewhere in the Kanto region to Mizudafu. Katsuki's mother wanted them to meet, not knowing why he was in the system in the first place. When they went to the park, Katsuki and his foster mom were talking. That's when he showed off his quirk. He caused little explosions from the palms of his hands and showed off to the other kids. Then he approached Izuku. With a mischievous grin, "What's your quirk, Izuku? I bet it won't be as awesome as mine." Izuku smiled brightly and said with confidence, "I'm quirkless." That was a mistake. Katsuki looked at him, looked down on him. He looked at him with disgust, called him worthless, and left. That was the first time he had ever been hurt by Katsuki. It didn't take him long to figure out why his parents left him. Everyone he met that knew he had no quirk treated him differently. His siblings didn't interact with him like when he first arrived. Life was different from then on. He knew that his BRH parents abandoned him because he was a quirkless, worthless Deku. And that's all he'll ever be. Shoyuta was sitting at his desk at UA, staring at his computer. When he got home, he spent last night looking up Midoriya, trying to find out more about him. Turns out he was in the foster care system for the past 10 years. The dates match up almost perfectly. The date when Midoriya was diagnosed with being quirkless and the date when he entered the system. That was sickening. As he was thinking about it, Shuta's hands clenched and his quirk activated, lifting his hair up. He felt a gentle hand on his shoulder and blinked, looking up at Hisashi. He sighed and calmed down. "Yo, why the long face, Shoyuta? What's up?" Shoyuta smiled, happy to know Hisashi cares. "Just that Midoriya kid. He's a foster kid. He's been in the system almost as soon as he was diagnosed as quirkless. It's disgusting." "He's quirkless?" Hisashi questioned. Shoyuta nodded. "Yeah, this could explain why he was on the roof last night." A few of the other teachers perked up at his remark. "There was a boy on a roof last night?" Namuri asked, concerned. "Yeah, I managed to save him in time, but I'm still worried for him. He's young and his words concern me." Shoyuta frowned, wishing he could just save Midoriya from his life of suffering. Namuri stood there, thinking, then said, "Well, you want to help him, right?" Shoyuta nodded. "And this kid's a foster kid?" Shoyuta looked at her, and nodded again. Where was she going with this? "Then just, I don't know, adopt him." "The what?" Shoyuta turned red and buried his face into his capture weapon. "I can't just adopt that kid. I don't know the first thing about parenting, and seriously, I'm a teacher and a hero. I don't have time to raise him." Namuri said thoughtfully, "Even still, it might be in your best interest to look into it. He sounds like he needs a lot of support he hasn't been getting in the past." She was right and Shoyuta knew it. Midoriya probably doesn't get encouragement from others, and after brief research about the small quirkless population, it made sense. People just don't treat quirkless people the same. That's when he decided to reach out to the foster parents, Izumi and Torio Ishida. He got up and walked into the hallway to make the call. He rang the number he found on the site, waiting for a minute or two. Maybe this wasn't a good idea. Maybe it was. Who can say? A voice cut through Shuda's thoughts. Izumi Ishida here, hello? He responded, hi, you're the mother of the foster home in Yuzudafu, right? Yes, who is this? She responded skeptically. My name is Shoyuta Aizawa, and I was interested in learning more about one of your kids. I'm curious about Izuku Midoriya. Is he under your care currently? She responded, yes, he's leaving for school. Okay, thank you. This may seem strange, but has he been acting out of the ordinary at all? Anything concerning? Now she took a moment before responding. That wasn't concerning at all. No, not at all. Why? He sighed and mustered his courage. No real reason, I'm just making sure how he is. Is it possible to set up a meeting with him? I'd like to get to know him more. I'm sure I can, but I need to know why you're so interested in Izuku. Bluntly, he said, I'm considering adopting him. Izumi almost dropped her phone. By the time she finished her call with Aizawa, all the kids left for. Someone was interested in adopting Izuku? I mean, he really wasn't special, so she's more than happy to give him up, but it's still strange. Not to mention he asked about his well-being. Strange. Torio was walking into the kitchen, getting ready to leave for work. He looked up at Izumi and saw her curious expression. What's up with your expression? Did Midoriya say something to you? She shook her head. No, actually. Someone called me earlier and expressed an interest in Izuku. He looked perplexed. Someone expressed an interest in him? Yeah, like, he wants to meet Izuku. He said he's considering adopting him, which is completely strange. This is not how things normally go when someone wants to adopt from us. Torio nodded. Yeah, it is. And normally people aren't interested in teens. They usually adopt kids 8 and under. I told him that he can meet with Izuku after school, once he's home. They both stood there in silence. Izumi, leaning against the counter, and Torio standing by the kitchen table. He broke the silence. All right. We may finally be able to get him out of here. Let's try our hardest to get this guy to adopt him, and as fast as we can. She couldn't agree more. Torio got some food before making his way out the door, leaving Izumi to her thoughts. Was this really happening? Even though there was only one phone call between her and this Aizawa guy, she got ready for some paperwork. She was going to make sure she got Izuku out as fast as she could, and that was her goal. The school day went on as normal. Izuku kept his head down and avoided contact as much as he could. He was grateful that he didn't start breaking down right in the middle of class. That would be a shit show if he did. The bell rang for the end of school, and quickly Izuku gathered his things before rushing home, praying he didn't get pulled into another back alley. He felt his collar get yanked as he landed in a pile of trash in an alleyway. Clearly, God was not on his side. Such is life, though. As he tried to get himself up and out of the trash, he was slammed into the brick wall, causing him to lose his breath momentarily. He opened his eyes and saw Katsuki, grinning, with his hand on Izuku's shoulder, lackey laughing at him. I saw you rush to get out of class just now. What, you got a date, Deku? Who's your boyfriend? I bet he's just as sad and miserable as you. Katsuki laughed at him as he looked Izuku in the eye. Izuku shrunk, trying to make himself smaller. And no, I don't have a boyfriendy. I just want to get home today. He squeaked, making sure to avoid eye contact. Eye contact death. Years of run-ins with Katsuki has taught him that much, at least. Almost instantly, he felt a searing pain in his shoulder. He was using his quirk. Deku! Katsuki screamed at him. Izuku yelped out of fear in response, forcing himself to look him in the eye, despite everything in his body telling him not to. Good, Katsuki growled. I want to see the look in your eyes as I blow you to pieces. He then made an explosion on his shoulder, where his hand was placed. Izuku screamed as blinding pain rushed from his shoulder to his arm, chest and neck. This was unbearable. He was vaguely aware of Katsuki and his followers left, throwing his bag down, singed as well. Izuku sat there for a moment, in pain. Eyes blurred as he tried looking around, but moving hurt. However hurt he was, he had to get back home. He needed another plan. One where Eraserhead wouldn't stop him. Slowly, Izuku forced himself to get up. It was almost impossible, but he managed. Step by step, he walked away from Aldra Junior High, making his way back home. Shoyuta showed up to the Ishida residence almost as soon as school got out. He debated bringing Hisashi, but decided that would wait. He would meet Midoriya another time. You're just talking to the kid, making sure he's okay, nothing more. He walked up to the door and knocked, and who he presumed to be one of the kids answered the door. What do you need, mister? Well, at least this kid had manners. I'm here to talk to your mother, Mrs. Ishida. Is she here? The kid nodded, before closing the door. I hope he didn't just run off. A few minutes passed and an older, heavier man appeared at the door. You must be Mr. Aizawa. Shoyuta nodded, and he continued. Izumi's out getting groceries. Can I invite you in to talk? No, I'll wait out here for Midoriya. I'd like to talk to him alone, if that's all right with you. Speaking of which, is he home? The man, who he assumed to be Torio, shook his head. He must still be at school, but I bet he'll be home soon. Aizawa thanked him, and Torio closed the door behind him. Okay, sure it was a weird request to talk to the kid outside, alone no less, and Shoyuta knew that. It's even weirder and concerning that Torio actually let them talk alone. Wasn't he concerned about strangers and taking Midoriya? He was talking down the steps and by the street when he spotted someone, clutching their shoulder and limping towards the house. Shoyuta looked closer, and it was Midoriya, in a singed school uniform, holding an also burned bag. He ran over to help him, and Midoriya looked up at him and said, Eraserhead, what are you doing? His words were cut off as he passed out. Midoriya's hand fell from his shoulder, revealing severe, third-degree burns spreading from his shoulder to his arm and chest. Panicked, he looked back at the house. Through the window he spotted someone moving out of view. He waited for someone to come out the door. He knew someone saw Midoriya's state, but nobody came. He gritted his teeth as he lifted Midoriya up and took him to Yue. Recovery Girl would be able to help with his wounds better than he could. It was a long trip there, and a lot of people gave him weird looks. He doesn't blame them. He would too if he saw some gross-looking man carry an injured middle schooler somewhere. Strangely, nobody said or did anything beyond look. Finally, after what felt like eternity, he got to school grounds. He used his code to allow Midoriya in, and he made his way to the infirmary. Midoriya woke up a few times, dazed, but almost immediately passed out again. He must have some type of concussion, or be seriously injured from the burns. When he opened the door, he saw All Might talking to Recovery Girl in his true form. They both looked up, shocked and surprised when Shoyuta revealed the kid. Oh dear, what happened to this poor boy? Recovery Girl cooed as she guided Shoyuta to a bed, where they laid him down. I don't know, I was waiting and I saw him. I couldn't just leave him in this state, so I brought him to you. He looked at the window. I hope that's all right with you. Well, of course it's fine, I'm glad you did. He has a minor concussion and a serious third-degree burn. I'll heal him up, but only to heal the serious wounds. I don't want him to be so exhausted he can't go home. Recovery Girl wasted no time in fixing him up. She used her quirk, then took off the top half of his uniform and began treating the burn. All Might just stood there looking at the boy, but not saying anything. It was getting on Shuta's nerves. He snapped, What are you doing, All Might? Why are you just standing there? If you don't have anything to contribute you might as well as just go. But he didn't mean to go off like that. It was illogical to get so worked up over nothing. He looked back at All Might, who was just shocked. He didn't say anything for a while, then quietly, You're right, I'll leave you to it then. He quickly left the infirmary, and Shoyuta could hear him walk down the hall, as the sound of his walking faded away. He sighed. Recovery Girl, why was he even here? He doesn't start until next school year. She didn't look up from her patient and continued working. He wanted to catch up with me, probably because he knew he would be getting injured a lot. You know how reckless that man can be. She shook her head silently and was finishing up Midoriya's injuries. Now, why were you near this boy in the first place? Don't lie to me, you know that does no good in the long run. She was almost done, because she gave him a look. The look that meant, "Tell me or I never heal you again." He gave in. "I saved him last night. From suicide." She looked in surprise, but let him continue. "I found out he's a foster kid, and today I called his parents so I can talk to him. When I was waiting for him, he showed up like this." "Happy?" She glared back. "So what you're telling me is, you want to adopt the boy." He almost choked on air. He knew she was probably right, but it's sometimes hard to admit things. So what was his response? A grunt. Neither confirmed nor denied her claim, and is the best way of getting out of things. They both turned in surprise as they heard a groan come from the bed. Midoriya opened his eyes slowly, before jerking to sit upright. He quickly fell back on the bed as he cried in pain. Shura's eyes shot to Recovery Girl. "I thought you healed him. So why is he in pain?" She smiled. "Well, Sonny, I told you I healed his major injuries so he wouldn't be knocked out for too long. His pain has decreased significantly, but not entirely. He should be able to walk home with you now, as long as he goes slow." He knew she was right, didn't make it any better, though. A small voice squeaked, Eraserhead sir, where am I? Where's my shirt?" He saw Midoriya's face, which was very confused. "It's okay," he put a hand on his shoulder, "you're at the UA infirmary. You were in such bad shape that I brought you here to patch you up." "Midoriya, who did this to you? What happened?" A look of pain crossed his face, but it wasn't one of physical pain. Midoriya looked away. "It's nothing, some friends and I were messing around and this happened." Shoyuta was about to speak, when Recovery Girl cut him off. "Be honest with us. Friends don't accidentally give you a concussion and a third-degree burn. If Eraser didn't get there when he did, who knows what could have happened." Midoriya opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but closed it. "I don't know then, sure it wasn't an accident but I know that I deserved it. I mean why else would they do this? Oh God, this kid is getting bullied but has no idea it's not his fault. Kid, can you walk? 'Cause you're healed up enough to go. I think we should talk on the way back." Midoriya laid there for a moment before getting up and nodding. Well, this should be interesting. Izuku was nervous. And in pain. And scared. But also excited to talk to the Eraserhead? So he's a bundle of just about everything right now. It's taking all his willpower to not freak out. He could figure what Eraserhead wants to talk to him about, anyone could tell. What he couldn't tell was the expression he wore on the way out of UA. It was neutral, but he felt something more from him. Was it anger? It was more like rage. Pure, untamed rage. The thought of Eraserhead being angry sent a shiver down his spine, now fearing for his life. What has he gotten himself into? His internal monologue was broken by Eraserhead. "Who did this to you?" No bullshit answer either. "That was cold. I told you and Recovery Girl back in the infirmary, didn't I?" He tried to smile, but all that came of it was weak. Eraserhead looked at him, annoyed, before masking his expression with a more neutral one. Sure, it was still pure rage, but he was surprisingly good at this. One of the things that comes with being an underground hero for sure. "You first covered it up, then told us that you don't know why they did this." "Who is they?" He didn't beat around the bush. "Well, it was my classmate Katsuki." Eraserhead was about to say something when he continued. "But it wasn't his fault. He doesn't know how strong he is." Eraserhead's mouth shut tight. "He likes to tease me, but I heard that friends tease each other, so it's okay. Because we're friends. And it's not like it's that big of a deal anyway. It's all right and look at me, I'm still standing." Izuku's rambling was cut by a stern voice. "You call yourself all right?" Izuku felt himself shrinking, smaller by the second. "When I found you, you passed out from your injuries. You are not all right, don't even lie to yourself, kid." His voice was small now. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I won't do it again." He kept his eyes to the ground as they walked, but he could feel Eraserhead's gaze soften. "I should be the one apologizing," he said with a sigh. "I'm angry, but not at you. I'm angry at this Katsuki kid for doing this to you, and for you taking the blame for it." They spent another moment in silence. There was a discrepancy here. Something wasn't right. Then it hit him and he stopped walking. Hold on, I was almost to my house when I saw you. His gaze narrowed at Eraserhead as he turned his face from him. I mean, you know where I live, but why were you there earlier today? Eraserhead dug his face into his capture weapon, only his eyes really visible. I was wondering when you'd ask about that. I won't lie, I found out that you're in the foster care system. I didn't want you to be there any longer, especially after how we met and today, so I found a way to get you out. Izuku was confused. Get him out? Ignoring the fact that you somehow acquired that information about me, what do you mean get me out? The only way someone can leave is if they run away, get adopted, or turn of age. He looked at him. How would you get me out? Eraserhead really looked away now, probably trying to hide that blush that Izuku could see between the wraps of his weapon. Quietly, barely audibly, he said, by adopting you. That hit Izuku like a ton of bricks. Wait, seriously? Who would want to adopt me? He laughed nervously. I'm a nobody. His brain was running kind of slow, but he'll chalk that up to the concussion. Hold on, didn't Recovery Girl fix that? I would. He said it louder, and stopped hiding in his capture weapon to look Izuku in the face. I'm apprehensive because I don't think I could parent you all that well, and I don't want to mess it up for you even more. Tears filled his eyes. Somebody wanted him? Just as he is? That was too much, as his feet moved on their own to hug Eraserhead, who stood there wholly unprepared. Eraser just patted his head awkwardly. Now hold on, I don't want you to get your hopes up. I literally work 2 jobs, and even though my husband and I could probably manage, I don't want to risk it. Now this caused Izuku to pull away, looking up and very confused. Wait, you're married? Since when? Who'd you marry? Eraserhead was once again blushing. All in due time, kid, you'll get to meet him, I'm sure. It was at that moment that a loud buzz emitted from one of the many pockets in Eraserhead's outfit. He pulled out his phone, held it for a minute before deciding to answer it. What do you need? Luckily, his phone was up very loud and he could hear the other end faintly. It was someone extremely loud and he knew that voice. From somewhere. Hey Sho, are you still with the kid? He sighed. Yes, Hisashi. I'm still with the kid. I'll explain later, but we were at UA visiting Recovery Girl. You didn't answer my question. What? Need. Harsh. I'm just making sure you're alright, 'cause you've been gone for so long. Now that I know you are, why don't you let me talk to the kid? Almost as soon as Hisashi, he presumed, said that, Eraserhead ended the call and shoved his phone back into his pocket. He started walking again, and Izuku walked with him. He was tempted to ask who that was, but he'd rather not expose himself for eavesdropping, so he kept walking. They continued talking about different things. School, his home life, standard stuff. It was nice to talk to someone. Eventually, they reach his house, and Izuku waves to Eraserhead before entering the house, feeling Eraserhead's eyes on him. Shoyuta saw Midoriya walk into the house, and turned to leave soon after. He was utterly embarrassed. He didn't mean to talk about being married or adopting him. What a mess. Now he feels obligated to help the kid out, if at all possible. First, he has to talk to Hisashi. It didn't take too long to get back to their apartment, and when he arrived he promptly tossed himself onto the couch next to Hisashi. Hisashi was watching the TV and starting running his fingers through Shuta's hair as his head rested on his thigh. After a few moments of calm bliss, Hisashi asked, "Are you able to tell me what happened?" Then Shoyuta broke down. He was crying, something he rarely did, and only did in front of those closest to him. Hisashi didn't do or say anything other than silently comfort him. His presence alone was enough to calm him down. He covered his eyes with his arm and sniffled, F-. He was thinking back on the kid. The poor boy, he hurt with him. He didn't pity Midoriya, he empathized with him. The pain, the torture, everything. It hurt to see someone with no hope, someone so young. It pained him beyond belief. It reminded him of who he was, memories of middle school flooding back to him, giving him no time to stop crying. Soon, the pain ebbed and the tears stopped flowing. Hisashi never left, quietly speaking words of love and affirmations. He calmed down enough to tell Hisashi everything. How he waited for Midoriya, his injuries, taking him to Recovery Girl and their conversation on the way home. He described the amount of rage that covered his sadness, the pure emotions he felt, and how hard it was to bury them deep, for Midoriya's sake. There was silence. Then, I think we should adopt him. Get him the help he needs, let him succeed in life despite the odds. You care about him, You barely know him, but you already care. Hisashi was quiet and firm when speaking to Shoyuta. I agree. I'll call the Ishidas again and work things out. I wouldn't be surprised if they were already working on paperwork for him. Hisashi nodded, and Shoyuta sat up, and they watched TV together. Nothing too special going on. After a while he gets up to start dinner, thinking of having a kid. Dinner was simple, just marinated chicken, asparagus, and rice. It wasn't too bad, and the pair ate in relative silence. After cleaning up, Hisashi moves to the office and Shoyuta pulls out his phone, ready to call Mrs. Ishida. He hesitated, second-guessing himself. This was not the time to second-guess, he decided, and called her. The phone rang for no longer than 3 seconds before. Mr. Aizawa. I've been waiting to hear back from you. He rolled his eyes. I know this is extremely sudden, but I'd like to adopt Izuku. After talking with him this afternoon and talking with my husband, we decided. When can we work out the paperwork and finalize this? Oh, very soon. I've finished up our end of the paperwork. I have a feeling that expediting this whole ordeal is in your favor. I can send you all the necessary paperwork. That would be great, thank you. It had barely been a week since he and he means Izo. Dad? Hold on, what am I supposed to address him as? He got sidetracked. It had barely been a week since he met his future dad. Izuku had no idea how his foster parents managed to get this done so fast. It was basically 5x faster than it normally has been. It all felt so sudden. Just earlier in the week his then parents told him to pack up his stuff to live with his future parents. He was standing by the street with 2 large moving boxes by his sides. He didn't have that many belongings, so it made moving very easy. He saw a car come around, and Eraserhead stepped out, helping Izuku with the boxes. Izuku didn't bother saying goodbye to anyone. Was there really a point? I mean, they didn't like him and Izuku didn't want to annoy them further. He got into the passenger seat, buckled up and rode to his future home. His anxiety was rising the closer they got. Eraserhead was silent, keeping one hand on the wheel and the other resting on the side of the door. Finally, they arrived at a nice apartment complex. They unloaded the 2 boxes by he really meant Eraserhead, and took it up to the 3rd floor. This is it, Eraserhead said, stopping at the door with a 312 on it. He opened the door, even while his hands were occupied, and Izuku was greeted with someone he never thought he'd see. Wait, Present Mike is your husband? Izuku said loudly before covering his mouth with his hands, not meaning to be that loud. How embarrassing. Present Mike shot finger guns at him, just smiling a cheeky smile. Okay, he was vaguely aware that the 2 were friends, so finding out his new dads were literally pro-heroes is kind of shocking. He stood there while Eraserhead walked into the apartment and dropped his stuff into a room towards the back. He looked at Izuku. Well, are you going to come in or are you just going to stand there gawking? He hurried in, closing the door behind him. Present Mike pulled Eraserhead in for a hug, saying to Izuku, Hey! You clearly know my hero name, but you can call me Hisashi or Dad, whatever you prefer. He then looked at Eraserhead, and you can call my dear husband Shoyuta or Dad again. It's really up to you, so let me know what you decide. Present no, Hisashi? Hisashi shot him a friendly smile and let go of Shoyuta. He looked around the apartment. As he stood there he could see a small kitchen area and a living room directly across from it. On either side of the living room were 2 bedrooms, the one farthest from the door being his. I know this is a lot, and it is late evening, but I'm going to start cooking dinner. I'm making katsudon. I know it's your favorite. Izuku looked at Shoyuta shocked. How do you know it's my favorite? Oh, sorry. Thank you very much, sir. No need for formalities while we're here at home. As for how I know, you told me earlier in passing. I have a keen memory. He smiled at Izuku before turning back to cooking. Izuku walked into his room, and what he saw amazed him. There was a queen-size bed up against the wall with a nightstand and bookshelf hugging both sides of it. On the wall opposite the bed, there was a desk and a brand new laptop for him. He didn't even know what to think. This was more than what he ever expected when getting adopted. He felt tears on his cheek and wiped them away so his new parents didn't see how big of a crybaby he was. If they did, they would send him back. He started unpacking his things, and soon enough it was time for dinner. At dinner, the food was delicious. He almost started crying again, but stopped himself. They were eating. Hisashi spoke up. So, Izuku, have you decided what to call us? Izuku stopped chewing, then remembered his manners and finished his food quickly. He started in a small voice. Is it alright if I called you two Dad? He flinched as Hisashi put his hand on his shoulder. Of course it is, Izuku. We're your parents now, and we want you to be as comfortable as possible. We care for you. Hisashi, who he could now call Dad, looked at him sincerely. Izuku's eyes watered and quickly wiped at his eyes. Thank you, Dad. No problem, Izuku. Izuku had to get up earlier to get to school now, even though he had a lot on his mind. So his parents are interesting, to say the least. Because they both work at UA, they also had to leave early, but always made time for Izuku. Thankfully, because of the adoption, he rarely sees Katsuki before and after school, allowing him some semblance of safety. For now, the school day went on as it normally does, but things came crashing down when school let out. Izuku rushed out, trying to avoid missing the train, but he was grabbed by his collar and shoved into the alleyway near the school, landing on his tailbone and the wind taken out of him. Gasping for air, broken memories of last time this happened echoed in his mind, and he started to hyperventilate. The last time it happened was the worst attack he's faced, and it was almost more than he could bear. The fear he felt was unshakable. Katsuki looked down on him, smiling a crooked smile. You've been avoiding me, Deku. He started walking closer, hands exploding. I noticed this past week how you haven't been here in the mornings as early, and you always rush out of school, nowhere to be found. What's up with that, huh? Izuku barely got his voice back and started to back away from the encroaching Katsuki. I got adopted, and my train schedule changed because of that. His voice was hoarse and raspy and it hurt to speak so soon. Katsuki leaned down to look Izuku in the eyes. Don't delude yourself, Deku. Nobody would adopt a useless waste of space like you. He finished his phrase with a strong right hook to Izuku's face, sharp pain blossoming from contact. He got up and walked away. His lackeys soon followed from outside the alleyway, praising him. Izuku held his face and forced himself to get up and walk to the station, but he knew he missed his train. He walked there, rubbing his lower back and feeling a bruise start to form. Looking at the timetable, he was going to have to wait for at least an hour before his train came. After about 30 minutes of bored waiting, his phone buzzed abruptly and scared him. He saw that his dad was calling. Hey, what's up? His bored voice came through. Where are you right now? Your train was supposed to arrive a while ago. Izuku was nervous. Should he tell him the truth or lie? Thinking back on what Katsuki said, nobody would actually want him, so why be honest? He wouldn't believe him anyway, so he lied. My teacher wanted to talk to me about a test grade, and when we were done, I missed the train. He laughed nervously, hoping his lie would work against his father. We'll talk more when you get home. We have a lot to discuss. Stay safe. The call ended before Izuku could say anything. It was in his dad's regular fashion though. But did his lie work? He didn't sound too convinced. Shoyuta and Hisashi were already home and waiting for Izuku. Soon enough, the door opened and closed with a click as Izuku walked in with a bruise on his cheek. Hisashi spoke first. Izuku, what happened to your face? He was relatively calm, but had an aggressive gleam in his eye. Izuku, as expected, looked down before saying, It's nothing, just a small bruise. He looked up at them. It'll be fine. Shoyuta sighed, typical. Sit down on the couch, Hisashi will clean it up for you and we can talk. Izuku merely nodded, taking his shoes off and dropping his bag and sat down beside Hisashi, who started treating the bruise. Shoyuta started talking. We really need to talk about the future. You get almost perfect grades and are clearly bright. You also write in those notebooks all the time, which I'm curious about. Izuku stuttered a bit before a good sentence came out. I wouldn't call myself bright, and as far as the notebooks go, I just do basic analysis of heroes. His voice was small, something should has gotten used to in the short amount of time they've lived together. Slowly, "May I see one of them?" Izuku blushed, then winced at the cold rubbing alcohol on his cheek. "I mean, I don't see why you'd want to, but I'm not questioning you at all. They're really nothing special, so I feel like it would waste your time, but I won't stop you." I'm rambling again, I'm so sorry." His voice trailed off as Hisashi just laughed, causing Izuku to look very confused. "I'm laughing because you got so worked up. It's okay, trust me." Hisashi was kind and gentle, a side that Shoyuta truly loves. Izuku got up after Hisashi was finished and grabbed one of his notebooks, reluctantly handing it to Shoyuta. He mumbled something that he couldn't quite catch, and cracked it open. The pages were filled with scribbled analysis and drawings of pro-heroes, going in depth on their quirks and fighting style. "Holy shit," he muttered to himself. One page caught his eye, and flipped to a page with Hisashi on it. A small, detailed sketch of him on the right of the page and almost 2 full pages of writing. He knew so much about his husband's hero career, things that most people don't even notice. This was insane. He knew Izuku was smart, but he's a genius. He couldn't imagine how Nizu would act if he met him. He shuddered slightly thinking of the chaos they'd start. After a few minutes of reading, he handed the notebook back to Izuku with a shocked look on his face. Izuku looked like he was going to pass out. He mumbled, "I'm sorry if that was creepy, I know it's not good and that people do better, but you asked to see it so I obliged." Shoyuta got up and just hugged Izuku. "It wasn't creepy at all. You're a genius in every sense of the word, and I'm making sure you meet Nizu." He released Izuku and looked him in the eye. "Have you ever thought about applying to UA? You have the brains for the support course and everything." Izuku looked away again, seemingly embarrassed. "I was going to apply for the hero course there. I don't know how that'd work though, considering it's about quirks and I don't have one." Hisashi smiled a wide mischievous smile. "Oh, we can fix it to be more inclusive, don't worry." He looked at Shoyuta, obviously cooking up a plan in his head. "But I don't want an advantage because my parents are teachers. That wouldn't be fair." Izuku normally trips up over his words, but this was clear and confident. "Interesting." Before Shoyuta got the opportunity to speak, Hisashi started. "It would be extremely fair, we wouldn't pull any strings for your success, only changing the way testing happens." Shoyuta nodded in agreement, hoping to let Izuku achieve his full potential. "So I'm glad we were able to work out things for the future, but there's something we've been meaning to talk to you about." Izuku looked nervous as Shoyuta continued. "I understand being a teenager is a fragile time. Most kids don't have great self-esteem. Izuku, you've displayed terrible self-esteem and confidence and behaviors of being an abuse victim." He seemed to shrink and hyperventilate. Hisashi was quick to calm him down. "I know that this is difficult to talk about, but we need to know what causes this behavior. It's because we care about you and want to be the best you can be." Izuku didn't speak for a while as Hisashi continued to calm him down. Shoyuta was willing to wait. He knew how tough this is. He understood his pain, but that is precisely why they need to talk about it. It started slow. He talked about when he was given up after being deemed quirkless. His life with the Ishidas and how they isolated him and treated him. Katsuki came into the picture not long after. Izuku spoke of what happened to him, the mental and psychological pain he suffered. Shoyuta curled his fists when Izuku so full-heartedly believed it was justified and it was his fault. He wanted to jump in and tell him that he was wrong, but he instead listened to the best of his ability. "Get it all out now, work on it after." Izuku continued, slowly becoming more comfortable with the topic at hand. The way the teachers turned blind eyes to illegal quirk use, bullying and assault. How his parents saw his wounds and neglected them, adding to the hurtful words. Izuku didn't hesitate to talk about how it made him feel, how he felt so alone. Then came All Might, the great symbol of peace, who Izuku had looked up to for almost all his life. That bastard had told his son he could never be a hero, and on the same day he was suicide-baited no less. All of this suffering led Izuku to the rooftop that night, who fully believed the world would be better off without him. When he spoke about this, Hisashi pulled him in for a tight hug, very clearly affected by his words. The worst thing he said, by far, was his anxiety. Izuku believed that everyone would leave him like his parents did. That everyone hated him for something he couldn't even control. That if he cried in front of them, they would leave him for being a crybaby. And that's where it ended. Shoyuta walked over and sat down next to Izuku, who was now sitting in between both Shoyuta and Hisashi. They both hugged him, Shoyuta saying quietly, "We're not going to leave you. Not now, not ever. Get that silly notion out of your head." When he said that, Izuku started to cry into them, and they stayed like that for a while. Shoyuta had been, for good reason, afraid of becoming a family. He was worried about marriage, but Hisashi eased his fears. Then came the prospect of kids. Of course, having kids as a gay couple is never easy, but that wasn't his issue. Raising kids where he felt so inadequate to do so, it was frightening. He didn't want to damage them, so decided with Hisashi to not have kids. Izuku, of course, is the exception. The only exception, mind you, in that moment, holding his son, it was something he'd never felt before. A protective love for Izuku, and it was comforting. After that, they talked about how to tackle the issues. I think that seeing a psychiatrist and therapist would help, medically and such. Hisashi brought up a good point. The right kind of therapy is extremely helpful. Izuku didn't have any objections to this, he mostly just listened. Then Hisashi's presenter side of him came out. In a much louder voice than needed, "Well, I think it's about time to talk about something a little more light-hearted." Izuku looked up at him, confused. Izuku ain't the only one confused. I mean preparing you for entrance exams. Those are in roughly 8 months and we need to shape you up for them. But what if I fail the exams? Won't it have been for nothing? Izuku was concerned, but is that really surprising? Shoyuta stepped in. It doesn't matter if you fail or not. Personally, I want to see you become stronger. Physically and emotionally. It will benefit you greatly. I see, was all he said in reply. After that, Izuku worked on his homework in the living room as Hisashi looked over some of his notebooks. Shoyuta, on the other hand, was busy drafting an email to Nizu about the entrance exams. If he's able to convince Nizu to change the entrance exams, Izuku would have a shot at attending UA. Of course, they'd apply for the support course as backup, but he thought it unnecessary. Nizu was sipping tea at his desk when he saw he received a new email. From Aizawa-sensei. He opened the email and read it twice, not entirely believing what he was reading. Nizu knew that Aizawa really disliked the entrance exam in years prior, but receiving such a well-thought-out email was certainly not interesting. He proposed a few new ideas, and one caught his eye in particular. He responded quickly about the idea, agreeing with its validity and holding a meeting about it in the near future. He smiled as he leaned back in his chair, excited to see the chaos erupt from the faculty. Oh, this should be good, he thought as he sipped his tea. It was Saturday. Shoyuta just finished a phone call with the private practice about Izuku and his mental health. He walked his way to the meeting room at UA and took his seat next to Hisashi. Besides Nizu, they were the first ones there. He organized his notes as the staff members trickled in, his breath stopping for a moment when he saw All Might. He felt Hisashi tense next to him, and he willed himself to calm down. He wasn't going to make a scene, not at work and not with his future coworker. Nizu opened when they were all seated. So, as you know, we have been debating on how to change the entrance exam for possible first years. Our idea goes like this. The written portion as usual, but instead of fighting the robots, we have a free-for-all obstacle course, a mock rescue situation and a brief interview with one of you. Everyone clung to his words, in shock of the vast changes he's been making. It was Nemuri who broke the silence. What do you mean by, our idea? Nizu smiled as he took another sip of his tea. It was Aizawa who brought the issue of the exam to my attention, and that is our idea. Regarding the issue, Aizawa, would you like to explain? He nodded. Right, so the issue with the exam is that it isn't a good way of determining a student's potential as a hero. It shows off flashy, physical quirks, while quirks that only work on people are far less effective. I'm not always one for fairness, but this is such a huge oversight that I had to do something about it. Now it was All Might's turn. Why are we changing this up all of the sudden? It doesn't make sense. Shoyuta was now annoyed at him. Does it really matter why? The staff were speaking quietly to one another as Nizu continued sipping his tea. Hizashi spoke up. To put it simply, our son has a dream of being at UA. He can't face off against robots, like many other students, and we want to change that. We want him to achieve his dream. A phrase comes to mind when describing what happened next. Calm before the storm. Sitting in shock, some confused about them having a son, others concerned about bias. Then uproar. All Might was angry that they seemed to change the system for their son. Nemuri was shocked that this was about Izuku, others were angry at it all. As one would expect, Nizu spent his time smiling at the chaos, soaking it in. How typical. Hizashi and Shoyuta were busy shouting back at their fellow co-workers in defense of Izuku when Nizu stood up and in a loud voice. While I love what is happening, I do not tolerate fighting between staff members. I ask that you all sit down and listen for a moment. Even stopped in their places before quietly sitting back down and turning their attention to the principal. Once again he smiled. Both Aizawa and Yamada have agreed to not tell their son about the contents of this new exam. All will be judging at the exam, so it will prevent an overwhelming bias. As for this meeting, I expected more of a discussion than an all-out verbal brawl, but oh well. I would like to conclude this quickly. Does anyone have any revisions to the new exam? The room was silent and Shoyuta smiled in his capture weapon, happy that no one had objections. You are dismissed. Shoyuta and Hizashi were getting ready to leave when they were flocked by their co-workers, bombarding them with questions about Izuku. Shoyuta really doesn't like this much attention. You'll learn more about him in due time, everyone. For now, get out of my way, I have things to do today. Hizashi backed him up on that and they both exited the room and walked down the hall together. That went relatively well, don't you think, Sho? Yeah, I didn't expect it to be that hard to be near All Might. I just wanted to make him pay for what he's done. That two-faced, disgusting Badash. He was cut off as Hizashi pulled him into a side hug as they walked. I know, Sho will get through it. It was hard for me too, you aren't alone. They walked in quiet conversation even though Shoyuta felt someone watching them. Tashinori didn't know what to think, in all honesty. Aizawa normally glares at him, but that's because they are polar opposites. A daylight hero, flashy and popular versus an underground hero who hates the media and all forms of popularity. This morning, however, Aizawa and Yamada both were staring daggers at him. Then, during the meeting, it was revealed that they have a son. Alright, Tashinori didn't particularly care about that, but it felt important for some reason. After the meeting was over, he saw Yamada and Aizawa rush out of the room together, talking. He watched them as they walked, close enough to hear their conversation. Aizawa sounded angrier than Tashinori had ever heard him before. Yamada, always bright and loud, was angry too. This was all far too confusing for him. Why did this bother him so much? He always had haters, people who don't agree with him, but this was nagging at him. What had he done? Despite this, he checked his phone. He was going to be late for meeting with Naitai. He sprinted down the hall careful to avoid the path the couple were taking and ran down to the platform to go to Naitai's agency. He had a candidate for One for All, and even though they had gone their separate ways, he still valued his opinion greatly. As he made his way to the entrance, he was greeted by Bubble Girl. She let him in, directing him to Naitai's office. Tashinori's concern was mounting, but soon diminished as he opened the door and was met with his old sidekick. All Might, I'm so glad you came. Let's get to work talking about this candidate. A/N, for your convenience and mine, while in Izuku's perspective I'll use his dad's first names. Although he would be calling them both Dad. It just seems logical. Izuku was doing hero research when his parents got home. He was looking at certain hero fights, hoping to get a better idea of how they fight against villains. He heard a knock at the door and Hizashi came in. Oh hey, you guys are back, how'd it go? He looked at the ground. We have some news. He didn't sound too happy. That can't be good. All of a sudden he looked back up at Izuku with a crazy smile and yelled, "It got AO," before picking Izuku out of his chair and hugging him tightly. He squeaked out, "Too tight," and his dad placed him back into his chair, a smile still remaining. Shuta's voice carried from the main area of the apartment. Principal Nizu approved the changes, but we can't tell you them. Although, I doubt you'd want to hear it. Also, I talked with the psychiatry place. We're extremely lucky. They're taking new patients and can get in an appointment Friday evening. As I'm sure you already know, Hisashi's got that insane radio show he hosts. There was a small protest from Hisashi, so I'll be taking you. Izuku nodded. All right, thank you so much. He chuckled. I still can't wrap my head around all the kindness I've been shown. Well, you get used to it, kid. We're not going away anytime soon. His dad called from the main area again. Hisashi turned his attention back to Izuku. Izuku, athletic are you? We need to get you in tip-top shape before the exam. He examined his arms before answering. Yeah, I am not that strong. I was told I could never amount to anything, so why bother, right? Hisashi agreed sadly. I see where you're coming from. We're going to need to set up a plan for you to get stronger without overexerting yourself. Izuku's eyes lit up as he opened up another notebook. He was muttering, okay, I have roughly 8 months before the exam, meaning I need to work on healthy eating as well as strength training. Will combat be necessary? Probably. I need to work on all aspects of being a hero. Rescue, combat, strength. His voice trailed off as his pencil was flying across the page, writing down everything he would need. In the corner of his eye, he could see Hisashi leaning up against the doorframe, smiling at him. The next week went as follows. Before school, Izuku would go on a run with his dads, then eat a hearty and healthy breakfast before school. He would go on during school, then would go to a private gym with Shoyuta and work on his hand-to-hand combat. Do note that Izuku would get extremely beat up during it on days where he wasn't working on combat. He would be working out with Hisashi, weight training and endurance, mostly. Soon enough, it was Friday afternoon. He went on another run before he took a shower and got ready. He and Shoyuta left for the train station and made their way to the practice. After his dad was done with the paperwork, they were called to the back by a nice-looking young woman. They made their way to her office when she introduced herself. Hello, Izuku. My name is Dr. Fuyuka and I'll be your psychiatrist. Would you like to get started? Izuku nodded, and their meeting started. It took about an hour, and they left with a slip of paper for medication and a few therapy recommendations. His dad squeezed his hand reassuringly as they walked out and back to the station. Quietly, thank you, was all he said to his dad. They had decided on weekly appointments with a therapist she recommended to them. It would be CBT therapy, something Izuku had never heard of before, but he was willing to try. The next 7 to 8 months went by quickly for him. He worked hard training for the exams, but worked even harder with his mental state. His therapist, a nice older man, worked with him on his issues, tackling them and working on how to stop the negative thought processes he had. He woke up and went to bed sore every night, but it wasn't anything he couldn't handle. Slowly, he noticed his physical changes. He stood taller, he filled out a lot and had faint abs. His parents repeatedly reminded him of how proud they were of him and where he's come. The bullying didn't really stop, but Izuku was more able to handle it now. He wasn't always able to move past the harsh words, but more often than not he used the skills he learned to cope. It was getting better. The suicidal thought he harbored for years lessened. Some nights he'd lay in bed, wishing his dad wasn't there to stop them all those months ago. He would lay there wishing he died, craving the feeling of being on the brink of death. His rational thoughts got his head out of there, remembering the amount of anxiety he felt after and reminded himself that people will miss. He knew it would be difficult, and that the thoughts may never leave him, but he still moved forward. The morning of the exam crept up on Izuku. He was barely able to sleep the night before because of his excitement and nervousness. He quickly got out of bed before getting dressed in his middle school uniform and heading to the kitchen. Shoyuta was already busy cooking up a nice breakfast for everyone. He soon found a hand on his head, ruffling his hair. He looked up to see Hisashi. Good morning, kiddo. Did you get some sleep? Izuku laughed. Not much, but some is better than none, right? Shoyuta had his back facing them. If you're tired, I can make you some coffee. It usually helps me wake up. Hisashi quickly protested. No way are you giving him coffee. What if he becomes a zombie addict like you? Izuku started laughing and Shoyuta shot back. I'm not a zombie by any means, and I'm not addicted. I can stop whenever I want. This sent Izuku and Hisashi both into fits of laughter. Izuku's anxiety fizzled and disappeared as he ate breakfast and joked with his dad. Soon, all three of them were out the door and on the way to UA. When they arrived, his dads were holding hands and talking when they all heard a loud, familiar voice. "Deku? I told you not to come here." His parents turned around, defensive, as Izuku calmed his nerves and forced himself to face Katsuki. Sure enough, it was him. He was standing there, tiny explosions coming from his palms with an angry expression. He came walking towards them, the explosions getting larger as Izuku's anxiety rose. Suddenly, the explosions stopped and Katsuki looked very confused. He opened his mouth to speak, but Shoyuta spoke first. "So you must be the infamous Katsuki Bakugo. Since you haven't been permitted, quirk use is not allowed." This only made Katsuki more angry. "Who do you think you are, a hobo?" Shoyuta just smiled cruelly. "Why, I'm a teacher here. Why don't you run along to the testing area before you make yourself into a bigger fool?" "Teach." Katsuki walked past them, purposely bumping into Shoyuta on his way. The encounter wasn't longer than 2 minutes, but Izuku had basically forgotten to breathe. He shuddered, once again worrying about the exam and Katsuki. Hisashi laid a hand on his shoulders, relaxing him. The three continued walking, dropping Izuku off at the testing room while his parents walked off together. Izuku walked nervously to his seat, thankful that he was separated from Katsuki. Instead, he was next to a shorter girl with light brown hair and matching eyes. Before he could talk to her, Aunt Namuri, Midnight, got to the stand and cracked her dubby, catching everyone's attention. "Hello my dears, I'm so glad you could make it. The exams being passed out to you are not to be opened until I say so." A devilish look in her eye formed, "Or you'll be punished by me." The room was dead silent as the exam packets were handed out. "Now that everyone has their packets, you have 3 hours to complete this. Best of luck and start." She cracked her WHP again as Izuku broke the seal and started on the first question. Izuku worked hard on the written exam. He was able to double-check all his answers before time ran out. The questions weren't too difficult. The hard part was getting them all done correctly without overthinking or guessing. When time was up, he stretched out his arms and groaned. He heard a thud to his right, so he quickly turned to see that girl had her head on the desk, groaning. At the very least she didn't pass out. He gently put his hand on her back. "Hey, are you okay?" His mind was freaking out. He touched a girl. He also talked to a girl. It took Izuku a lot of work to keep his cool. She groaned again, but brought her head up. "I'm fine, but that test was a beast. I don't even know if I passed." Izuku smiled brightly. "I'm sure you did great." He realized that he hadn't introduced himself yet and freaked out again. Sorry. I'm Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you." She looked at him. "Hi Midoriya. I'm Achiko Uraraka." She glanced behind him quickly. "Hey, I think we should get going." Almost everyone else left. He looked around and she was right. "Holy see. I'm so sorry." They both scrambled to get their things and ran out of the room to follow the rest of the group. The two were separated when they went to their respective changing rooms. Izuku mainly focused on himself as he changed into his tracksuit and headed out to the training field. It was large. One part appeared to be an obstacle course while the other looked like a disaster zone. Going off of his observations, he could infer that there would be some sort of race on the obstacle course, but as far as the disaster area when it could be a few things. It could be rescue, or clearing rubble, maybe gathering intel. It was pretty torn in Izuku's mind, but he personally believed it to be a rescue attempt. That is what heroes do. His thoughts were interrupted when he heard a loud, energetic voice that he knew all too well. Hisashi stood on a platform and shouted, "Come kids! Gather around and I'll tell you about the first part of the exam." He waited a moment for everyone to congregate near him before continuing. "All right, this is a free-for-all obstacle course. You all will be going in at the same time and will try to come out first. Got that?" Izuku took his time to analyze the kids around him. There were about 100 other kids. A lot had heteromorphic quirks, but he could see a few people charging up and getting ready. A few kids glanced at him, writing him off at first glance. A few months ago this would have hurt him, but now he used it to his advantage. If these people didn't think he was worth anything, he would be able to come up from behind and take victory for himself. Soon enough, it was time to start. He made his way to the start line, mixed in the middle of the mess of people. When he heard the horn, he and many other people sprinted through. One boy was extremely fast with some form of engines on his legs, others were generally faster. He continued running when he was faced with the first obstacle, a large wall of smooth concrete. Well, it wasn't entirely smooth when he got to it. There were a few divots on the wall, most likely from someone's quirk. If Izuku could time it right, he'd be able to clear the wall with ease. He took a moment to hype himself up before jumping and grasping onto the small holes. He brought his feet up and moved from hole to hole, ending up on the top. He climbed up and saw the drop he had to now deal with. He looked around, and something caught his eye. It was an almost clear slab near the top, and when he looked closer he could see many making their way down to the ground. He hesitantly put one foot on the slab closest to him, finding it solid, and quickly stood on it. However, right as he stood on it, it disappeared from underneath him. He freaked out for half a second before attempting to grab on the second slab. His hand grabbed it and held on for dear life. So these things must have some form of time limit. With this knowledge, he hung from the second slab before grabbing the next one. He kept using his arms to hold on and work his way down. When his feet finally touched the ground, his arms burned slightly. There was no time to waste, and he started running until he hit the next obstacle. This next obstacle was a rushing river, too wide to jump across and too fast for anyone quirkless to swim in. He saw a girl with long green hair jump in and swim across with ease. He frantically looked around, trying to find something to help him get across when he saw a slight sheen on the water. It was oil. He decided the best course of action, unfortunately, was to try and slide across the river. Izuku knew he'd be moved considerably downstream, but if it got him across, it worked. He worked up the courage and slid across, essentially moving diagonally as he partially fell into the water. By the time he was fully submerged, he held onto the other side for dear life. He pushed himself up and out of the river, running toward his next issue. This time, he saw a large area of bits of land surrounded by holes, like tiny islands. From the looks of it, the only option was to hop on the small areas of land to get across. Izuku ran and jumped onto the first one only to find it unstable. He quickly jumped to the next, finding that one to be unstable too. He continued running and jumping from island to island before he made an uncomfortably long jump. He slipped when he jumped to the end, barely able to grasp on with his already sore arms, and once again pulled himself up and out. He started running again, but found himself at the finish with several other students. He didn't expect himself to be in the top 25, but he was. When he looked back on the obstacle course, it was really geared toward the athletic and physically gifted. He thought this was supposed to be more fair than whatever it was last time. He sat down while waiting for the other kids to finish when he spotted Katsuki a ways away from him. Izuku decided the best course of action was to ignore and avoid, and eventually the remaining kids who didn't finish were brought around to meet the others. This time they found the rescue hero 13 standing on another podium. "Hello, children. Good work on the obstacle course. I know that must have been difficult for those without physical and mutant quirks. This next test is fair ground for everyone, though, as it is a mock rescue. Today your goal is to save all the people from the earthquake. We will be substituting real people for some robots, placed in several areas. Your goal? Save as many of these robots." So his idea was correct about this being rescue-based, but robots? Realistically, having people could possibly endanger them if something went wrong, so it does make sense for them to work with robots. They were led over to the Fallen City area by 13. "Now begin," she cried. Everyone ran into the streets, looking and listening for the cries of the people trapped. Izuku ran into the heart of the area and looked around. He heard a cry to his right, and quickly ran to that area. He followed the sound until it was rather loud. He found the small robot stuck under rubble, crushing its lower half. Izuku lifted up the rubble as best he could before struggling to take one hand and remove the robot. He then picked it up and rushed it over to the front of the area where people had begun to place the rescued robots. This continued for a while. Izuku found a robot, released it, and returned it. He was disrupted when he heard an explosion and yelling. "Get out of my way, for eyes." Another voice said, "It doesn't matter who gets it just needs to get done, you delinquent." The first voice, most definitely belonging to Bakugo, "Who are you calling a delinquent? You better watch your voice, for eyes." Most people, like Izuku, had stopped to overhear this exchange go on. Quickly Izuku realized he couldn't afford to waste his time listening to whatever was happening, and turned his attention to finding more robots. He worked with Uraraka and a few other participants to remove rubble and reach the victims. Every once in a while, he'd look over to see Katsuki, as angry as ever, trying to rescue them by himself. Finally it was over. There was a hefty amount of small and large robots near the entrance of the area, and Izuku was covered in dirt. His wet tracksuit didn't help as all the dirt stuck to him like glue. Students were called 8 at a time for their interviews, and Izuku waited patiently for his turn. When his name was called, he ran over to Hound Dog, who told him where to meet his interviewer. He followed the directions and knocked on the door when he heard a faint, "Come in." He stepped in, expecting one of the teachers. Instead he was greeted with the principal of UA. Hello. I'm Izuku Midoriya, although I'm sure you are already aware of that." Principal Nizu smiled. "Yes, I have been waiting to meet you ever since Aizawa and Yamada brought you up." Izuku was confused. "You have? And they talk about me?" The principal laughed. "Yes, of course they have. You're the reason we changed the exam." "Wait, seriously? I had no idea they brought me up when making the decision." He sipped his tea. "Well, yes. This is a semi-structured interview, but I do have a few questions for you." Izuku nodded for him to go on. "First off, what did you think of the exam? And I mean all of what you've been presented with today." Izuku gulped, unsure if he should share his full opinion. He decided, based off of his knowledge of the principle, that the more the better applies. Well, the written portion had lots of simple questions, but the real challenge is making sure you don't spend too much time on them. You'll run out of time if you overthink. The obstacle course is cruel to those who don't have mutant quirks or helpful quirks in that situation. The only way I was able to succeed was by using others' quirks and my own strength. The rescue portion, while it's my understanding that people posing as the needy can be unsafe, using robots wasn't the best. They made it feel more fake, not helping the participants. As far as the interview goes, you really have to get lucky with who you have for an interviewer. For me, there's a chance I got you randomly, but it's more likely that you arranged for me to meet with you, correct? Nizu smiled wide. Correct. I wanted to meet you to understand your analysis skills. Needless to say, I am impressed. Secondly, what did you think of everyone's quirks? I saw a few powerful ones. There was a boy with what looked like engines. The interview lasted a few more minutes, Nizu asking a few questions and Izuku responding in full. When it was over, Nizu thanked Izuku and he left. Shoyuda was truly exhausted. First he had to watch all those kids run the course and attempt to play hero. Then he had to actually interview a few of them. It was hell. He now sat with his fellow teachers, analyzing the exam. The written test was a scantron, making it easy to look at scores. The top 3 were Katsuki Bakugo, Izuku Midoriya and Hitoshi Shinso, all of them barely beating the others by 1 or 2 points. He smiled to himself, proud that his son was in the top 3. Next came the obstacle course, where he saw many kids with physical quirks finishing first. Many others were stuck behind trying to tackle the insane first challenge. Bakugo used his explosions to scale the wall, causing lots of small dents in it. Izuku used this to his advantage and quickly climbed the wall. He almost fell on his way down, but used the near-translucent slabs left by a previous student who created platforms to move forward like monkey bars. Several kids followed him by using the holes, but few succeeded. Soon, 2 students come charging and smash through the wall, allowing for others to follow. A girl with a frog quirk swam through the lake. Some jumped over, one used a tape-like material to shoot his way across. Everyone was smart about it. That same girl who has a frog quirk jumped her way through the field, barely touching the platforms. As time went on, the platforms began to crumble, forcing students to stop. Those who were stuck on the platforms, but fell safely into an area below the course. Unfortunately, many students were stuck at the beginning stages of the obstacle course and were brought around to try the rescue. Many of his staff members gasped when they saw just how violent Bakugo was during the rescue, writing down notes for the discussion later. They saw how many worked together while some tried to work alone. The idea of this mock rescue was to force them to work together, so points were deducted when they tried otherwise. Everyone rated each kid's performance and added notes about their interview if they conducted it. The final list of kids accepted was held from the staff. Nizu had the final say and vowed to take everything and everyone into consideration. Now, all he and Hisashi could do was pray for Izuku's acceptance letter. Izuku was freaking out. He had to wait almost a week for his acceptance letter and it was eating him up. His dads obviously saw this. He was literally pacing around the living room as Hisashi was trying to watch TV. He was about to say something to Izuku when someone came into the apartment. It was Shoyuta. He casually walks in with grocery bags on each of his arms and sets them down. From one of the various pockets he pulls out a letter, looking at Izuku. "I picked this up while I was out. It's from Yue." Izuku almost passed out, but then calmed himself down and walked over and took the letter from his father's hand. He took a deep breath, praying for confidence and good luck as he slowly opened the letter. He pulled out a letter and a small, round object. Suddenly the object lit up and projected an image of Principal Nizu. He smiles as he says, "Izuku Midoriya, I was thoroughly impressed with your ingenuity during the exam and detailed analysis of your fellow participants." However, Izuku's heart began to beat too fast and his smile faded into concern. "They need fine-tuning. I will be teaching you how to hone in on your skills while you participate in the hero course. Congratulations, young Midoriya, and welcome to UA." The program faded as Izuku stood there, shocked. He was grabbed into a hug by Hisashi, who quickly beckoned Shoyuta to join. Reluctantly, he actually really likes hugs, but doesn't want to admit it. He joined the group hug. When they pulled away, Shoyuta praised him. "I knew you could get in. I am extremely proud of you. Thank you, both of you." Izuku was wiping away tears of joy as he plopped onto the couch next to Hisashi, keeping his arm draped over Izuku. Katsuki was trying to hide his concern. It was 5 days after the entrance exam and he was starting to lose his cool waiting for it. His mom bursts in, holding a letter up. "Katsuki, it's from you." He growled, "I can see that, you hag. Now hand it here." She karate chopped him on the head before handing it to him. Quickly, he ripped it open and heard a large thud as something metal hit the laminated floor. He looked down to see a small disc light up and project an image that was near his waist. He crouched down to see 13 on the screen as she started to speak. "Katsuki Bakugo, you showed great promise in terms of power and intelligence during the exam. Unfortunately, you failed to complete the rescue portion as it was intended. It was our decision to allow you to attend UA in the General Studies course as opposed to the Hero course. Congratulations and good luck." The screen went black before disappearing as Katsuki sat down. His thoughts were cut when he felt a hard slap across the face. Before he could shout an angry retort, his mother began to speak. "Damn it, Katsuki. You couldn't even take the DMN test right and ended up in General Studies. I raised a fool." He looked at the paper in his hand. "But, Mom, I got first in the written portion. Isn't that enough for you?" She looked down at him with disdain. "If you want to be a hero, smarts alone won't get you there." She walked away as he stayed there, not believing it was true. How could he have let himself fall so far? He felt tears form on his face before wiping them away aggressively. He was going to be a hero, no matter the cost. Hitoshi was taking a walk around the block that evening when he noticed the mail had come. He grabbed it and sifted through it in case his letter came. About halfway through the mail was a letter from Yue, addressed to him. He stuffed the rest of the mail underneath his arm and opened the letter. He grabbed both a paper and a small metal object. Without warning, it projected an image of Eraserhead. He looked around as the projection started to speak. Thankfully, nobody was around. "Hitoshi Shinso, well done on your performance in the written portion and the obstacle course. You need improvement on effective communication with others, however. With that being said, welcome to the hero course at UA. The projected eraser head disappeared as he quietly fanboyed. His favorite superhero just congratulated him on entering his dream school in his dream course. He smiled, happy that he'll finally prove everyone in middle school that he doesn't have a villain's quirk. He walked into the house smiling as he examined the physical letter he received. Third place out of everyone? His mother stood in the kitchen, glaring at him. "What's that, Hitoshi?" "It's my acceptance letter to UA. I'm going to be in the hero course. I even managed to get third on the written portion." She quickly scoffed before tossing it onto the table and leaving. This wasn't unusual for Hitoshi. Whenever he brought home good grades, nothing seems to please them. He doesn't even get to interact with his siblings. They don't want him to use them. He made his way to his room and fell onto the bed. It's only a matter of time before he gets adopted out of this hell. His parents didn't see him off to his first day at school, but then again, why would they? He was walking down the hall when someone bumped into him, a shorter boy about his age with unruly, curly green hair. The boy was quick to apologize. "I'm so sorry. That was my fault. I wasn't paying attention, and here we are." "I'm sorry." He bowed. It's okay, you don't have to bow." He rubbed his neck with his hand and looked away. "I'm Hitoshi Shinso, I'll be in class 1A. He stopped bowing and the kid's eyes lit up. "I'm Izuku Midoriya, I'll be in class 1A too." "What a coincidence. Guess we should get going?" He smiled brightly. "Yeah." The rest of the walk there was about Hitoshi's quirk, but Midoriya never mentioned his own. When they opened the door, they found a few students already in the classroom. A taller boy with blue hair and glasses and some crazy hand gestures, too, was yelling at another student in the back with his feet up. "Remove your feet from that desk." Such an action is insulting to those who came to UA before us as well as the craftsman who made the desk. The student with his feet up simply said, "You don't control my actions." "What middle school are you from?" The boy adjusted his glasses. "I'm from semi-private academy. My name is Tenya Ida." The kid closed his eyes. "So you're rich, huh? One could consider your privilege and deem you unworthy of being a hero. My name is Fumikage Tokoyami." Ida scoffed before turning around and spotting the pair in the doorway. He started his introduction but Midoriya cut him off. "I heard you before. I'm Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet you, Ida." "I heard you too. I'm Hitoshi Shinso." Another girl approached them, but before she could speak, a tired voice came from behind them. "If you're here to socialize, then you might as well as leave." They turned around to find Eraserhead standing behind them. Wow, he was a lot taller in person. Midoriya spoke. I mean Aizawa-sensei." Wait, was he about to say "Dad"? Whatever the matter, Eraserhead spoke again. "You should all know your seats. Get to them. We don't have time to waste." They all scrambled to their seats, Hitoshi in front of Midoriya on the far side of the classroom. "I'm your homeroom teacher, Shoyuda Aizawa." From underneath the lectern he pulls out a gym uniform. "Put these on and head out to the grounds." So it was weirder than Izuku thought to have his dad as his homeroom teacher. He was happy to be friends with Shinso, though. He seems like a really nice guy. They all complied and got changed, and as Izuku changed he looked around at the other guys in the locker room. They were all much bigger than him, probably stronger too. He never had to change around so many athletic guys before and it made Izuku self-conscious of his smaller frame. He put his thoughts aside as he finished changing. They made their way to the field and met his dad there. "All right everyone, I'll be conducting some quirk tests. Because of the freestyle teaching at UA, we get to teach however we want. That means I can remove you from the opening ceremony to do this instead." "Uraraka." The girl from earlier squeaked. "Yes, sir." "How far could you throw in middle school?" 43 meters. "All right, now step into the circle and use your quirk this time. You can do anything as long as you don't leave the circle." She nodded and took the ball from his hand before stepping into the circle. She wound up her arm and threw the ball as hard as she could, but it didn't fall. It kept going into the distance, higher and higher. Shoyuda checked something in his pocket and his eyes widened slightly. He held it up for everyone to see, and it showed the infinity symbol. "This gauges your throws. As shown here by Uraraka, it's infinity." A few gasps and small conversations started before he quickly silenced them. There will be 7 of these tests, and the person who gets the lowest scores, he looked at them maliciously, will be expelled. Izuku knew this was false. Hisashi told him before school started. They went through the 7 tests. Izuku barely paid attention to his own standing as he analyzed everyone else's quirks. Infinity Girl, Achiko Uraraka, came up to him halfway through and asked why he wasn't using his quirk. He hesitated. Well, it's not that I'm not using it, I just don't have one. This stopped everyone in their tracks to look at him. Wait, like you're quirkless? He nodded. Yep, found out when I was 4. She looked down. Oh, I'm sorry. Before he could respond, someone else piped up. It was the redhead with spiky hair, Eijiro Kirishima. How is any of this fair then? This is for quirk assessment but he doesn't have one, so he'll end up in last and be expelled. Shoyuta smirked. That's why I have a special test designed for him. I'll elaborate after the initial 7 tests. When the tests were over, his dad looked at them. Alright, this is for Midoriya. I'm giving him 5 minutes to come up with a way to beat me. I'll go inside the building and when time's up, give it your all. You all can participate in this. He walked into the building as he finished speaking. Everyone was looking at Izuku. He gulped. Okay, we have to derive a plan for this to work. I've gotten a good handle on everyone's quirks so far. He was cut off by Ida. How can we trust that you aren't going to make fools of us? Shinso spoke up. I've listened to him talk about quirks. Just trust him. Ida wasn't too happy, but someone else spoke up vouching for him. Izuku continued. So here's the plan. Shuda's timer for 5 minutes was up. He was genuinely curious as to what Izuku would cook up for him. As he stepped out, he expected to be bombarded. Instead, he was wrapped around in Siro's tape. He was going to cancel his quirk when some form of powder was thrown into his eyes, essentially disabling him. He tried to break the tape but with no success. Instead, he was kicked to the ground and hit something cold. It was ice. He was then slid over before he felt a foot on his chest. Hey, Dad. He could practically hear Izuku's smile. He groaned. Izuku, call me Aizawa-sensei. Please. And yes, you got me. So release me now. Of course. He chirped. He was lifted to sit up as someone cut the tape around him. Please hold still, Aizawa-sensei. I made special eye drops for you. It was Yaoyorozu's voice. He felt cold bliss on his eyes. As he blinked a few times, he could see everyone standing around him, including Izuku, who helped him up. He looked around at them. Good work, everyone. Now it's time for the results. Everyone gulped as he walked over and pulled up the results. Mineta was last on the list and started to hyperventilate. Oh, I forgot to mention, this was all just a logic ruse. Nobody is getting sent home. Everyone sighed except for Yaoyorozu and Izuku. I knew he was lying, I thought everyone did too. Yaoyorozu said this hesitantly as everyone glared at her. The sight was too much and Izuku burst out laughing. Now the attention was all on him. Oh, I'm sorry. I knew as well, but I didn't want to spoil it so I kept it to myself. Sorry. Kaminari, a boy with bright yellow hair, spoke. I may be stupid, but you called him Dad, right? Izuku's breath caught as everyone murmured in agreement. Thankfully, his dad stepped in to save the day. Yes, Izuku's my son. Now, get changed and get to class. Everyone just stood there, jaws on the floor in shock of the metaphorical bomb their teacher just dropped. Izuku stood there scratching the back of his head as he laughed nervously. Yeah, what he said. Everybody was asking him about his home life, who the mom is, the works. Finally, we can talk about it during lunch, okay? I think Aizawa-sensei is going to strangle everyone for talking so much. In silent agreement, they all kept the conversation to themselves until lunch. English was just as weird as homeroom. Having both dads teach separate classes is insane. Finally, it was lunch. When they walked down, Izuku was bombarded by his classmates about his home life. Before they could say anything, a certain spiky, blonde-haired boy came charging up to him. Enraged, he screamed, Deku, why the F are you at UA? Izuku shriveled as he got closer, spitting on his face as he yelled. Meekly, I got accepted like everyone else. Katsuki grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the nearest wall. Don't lie to yourself, a quirkless Deku like you would never get into you. A calm, tired voice spoke. Then why are you here? Izuku opened his eyes to see Shinso and understood what was about to happen. Katsuki roared, "Who are dash?" He cut his sentence. Shinso smiled. "Let go of Midoriya, walk outside and stay there." Quietly, Katsuki released Izuku and walked outside like Shinso told him to. It was then that Izuku realized the entire cafeteria had gone silent. "Ah, thanks, Shinso. You're really amazing." Izuku was quiet, but Shinso grabbed him and pulled Izuku back into line for food. Shinso pulled something out of character. He yelled, "Go back to what you were doing. Nothing to see here." Quickly, as if snapped out of a trance, everyone went back to chatting. Once again, Izuku was bombarded with questions. They were, "Who was that?" And "Why'd he call you Deku?" "When we sit down, we can talk about everything, okay?" Everyone agreed to that and Izuku was glad. It's kind of exhausting to talk so much. Finally, they got their food and he started talking. "Alright, first off that was Katsuki. I knew him when I moved to his neighborhood. When we were 4, he read my name and declared it could also be read as Deku. After that, for some reason unknown to me, he gets angry at me." Everyone was crowded around the table, listening to him intently. But it's alright. I probably won't see him all too often, so don't go after him or anything." Kaminari popped up again. "Yo, tell us about Aizawa-sensei being your dad." He got smacked in the head by Ishido, who told him to shut it. Izuku just laughed. "It's okay, Ishido. So close to a year ago I met him and I guess he wanted to take me in? So no, he isn't my biological father, but I don't really remember my real parents. As far as home life goes, well, he's very quiet. He's also a great cook, so that's a real plus." Kirishima asked, "So is he married? Who's your mom?" Izuku laughed hesitantly, unsure if his parents want the students to know they're married. He opened his mouth, but was cut off. "Izuku, come here please." He looked up to see Shoyuta near the table. He excused himself and made his way over to him. "Thanks, I don't want to talk about you and Dad without you there." "Yeah, just find a way to dodge the question for now. It'd really jack up everything if the kids knew that the teachers were married." Izuku nodded before leaving to sit back down. By that time most everyone had left, all except Shinso, Todoroki, Uraraka, Azui and Ida. Finally, he had a chance to eat his food. It was heavenly. Izuku wasn't even sure how you could make plain rice taste so good, but it was lunch rush cooking. Todoroki is quiet, Uraraka insanely peppy. Izuku is blunt and honest. Ida is really into morals and law. Shinsu's voice is just generally quiet, but he does talk some. More than Todoroki at the very least. After lunch, there was heroics. The first was mostly syllabus items, nothing exciting. Finally, the exhausting first day was over. Izuku looked at his schedule sheet before putting it in his bag when he noticed something. After his regular classes, it said to meet with the principal. That's right. He was going to study under him. How could he forget? As everyone got their stuff to leave, Uraraka asked him if he wanted to walk with her. Quickly, he apologized saying he needs to do something before he goes. He sprints to the direction of the principal's office, following the map. When he arrived, he was hesitant to knock. As he looked around, a small red light caught his eye. It was a camera. He stared at it before smiling, and right as he was about to knock, the door opened. "Welcome, young Midoriya. Please, come in." Izuku stepped in and saw a tidy, neat office. It had ornate wooden bookshelves and many books to fill them. He looked around for a moment, taking it in. He set his bag down as he sat in the chair facing the desk. Nizu closed the door and sat in his seat, already pouring 2 cups of tea. Nizu held a cup toward him with his, paw? Well, hand, right? He made a mental note to look it up later. He accepted the tea and tasted it, exclaiming, "This is amazing. What type of tea is this?" Nizu smiled. "It's chamomile with a bit of sugar stirred in to bring out the flavor more. I'm glad you enjoy it." Izuku nodded, sipping more of the hot tea, mildly burning his tongue in the process. Nizu spoke again. "Midoriya, this will be our first lesson on analytics. We'll be covering things like quirk evaluation, natural observation, topics of that nature. Before I begin teaching, I would like to know where your skills lie. Izuku finished his tea. I see. Well, I've always been really interested in pro heroes, and decided the best course of action would be to analyze them. I started writing everything down in notebooks when I was about 4, right around the time I found out I was quirkless. I didn't stop writing though, and now I'm on my 14th volume. Nizu nodded. Do you happen to have any of your notebooks on you? Yes. I keep my latest one on me so I can fill it in if need be. He reached into his bag and pulled out his notebook. The handwriting is a bit messy, so I hope you can still read it. Nizu took it with his hand-paw thing and started to flip through it. His eyes widened as he appeared to read what Izuku had written. He sped through the book, stopping a few times to really take it in, and handed it back to Izuku. When we met during the interview, I was impressed. Aizawa spoke highly of you, which is rare, but I never expected this. Midoriya, what you have here is far above average. I'd like to get an IQ test so I can really gauge what level you're at. Izuku didn't really know what to say. The principal, being smarter than just about everyone, just complimented him on his intelligence. Thank you, I didn't realize that I was that good. Well, we will change your perspective, then. I will sculpt you into a hero with intelligence to rival my own. He muttered something under his breath, but Izuku let it be. The rest of the lesson was Nizu figuring out Izuku and his skills. The meeting wasn't more than 45 minutes, and when Izuku left he felt invigorated. As he rounded the corner, Lavender caught his eye. He looked over to see Shinso there, just as shocked as he was. Shinso spoke first. I saw you go in this direction and I was curious, so I just waited for you. He looked down. Sorry if that's creepy. Izuku smiled at him. Of course it isn't creepy. Now that we're both here, wanna walk together? Hitoshi was completely amazed. Midoriya didn't care. He didn't think he was creepy and was more than willing to talk to him about his quirk. Hitoshi smiled to himself as they walked to the train station. He had a friend. Hey, I've got a great idea. He looked at him. Yeah, what's up? You should hang out with me. My parents won't mind. He felt his throat catch. Nobody had ever offered to hang out before. Not even for projects. He started rubbing the back of his neck. Are you sure? Midoriya practically shone. Of course. And that's how he found himself at Midoriya's apartment, with present Mike on the couch and Aizawa-sensei reading. Midoriya kicked off his shoes at the entryway and ran over to give them both hugs. They both hugged back before turning their attention to Hitoshi, who just stood there awkwardly. Hi. Midoriya invited me over. I hope that's all right. This was weird. It was strange that his two teachers are literally married, but even stranger that they're polar opposites. I know it's a little weird with these two, but you'll get used to it. Midoriya, as cheerful as ever, grabbed him and pulled him into his room, closing the door behind them. The room itself wasn't too grand, but it was very neat. He had a bookshelf with rough-looking notebooks and some figurines. His bed had some plain dark green sheets and pillows. The thing that stood out the most was his desk. It was an absolute nightmare. Pencils and paper were everywhere. His laptop opened to some hero forum and was surrounded by chaos. Midoriya laughed nervously. Please don't mind my desk. I didn't clean it before school, so it's a complete mess. Oh, it's fine actually. Don't even worry about it. Midoriya pulled his chair out from the desk and sat with the back of the chair facing the bed. Come, sit on the bed. They were laughing over Midoriya's parents and their crazy antics. Midoriya wheezed, and then he yells, "We are not keeping a cat." He's interrupted by another fit of laughter. Okay. Then my dad replies, cat in hand, but he needs a home. It was the funniest exchange I have ever seen. Hitoshi laughed so hard he almost peed. Was this what having a friend was like? Laughing with no judgment? The door opened and it was Aizawa-sensei. He grumbled at them. While you two were laughing over my struggles, I made dinner, so come on. I don't want to impose. I'll leave if you'd like. The man just rolled his eyes. You've imposed enough, problem child. Now get your butt to the dinner table before I drag you. His words were, under normal circumstances, a threat, but his tone of voice begged to differ. The boys walked in and sat down at the table. It was pork katsudon. Midoriya brightened. Was it even possible for him to do that? Dad, you know this is my favorite, thank you so much. Aizawa-sensei shrugged. It's your first day in the hero course. I wanted to congratulate you. Shinso, I hope you aren't vegetarian. Hitoshi laughed slightly. It's all right, I like meat as much as any guy. Present Mike burst out laughing when he realized what he said. His eyes widened with embarrassment. I didn't mean it like that. I don't even like guys like that. Well, I don't know, but that's beside the point. I'm so sorry. Midoriya was wheezing again. It's okay, Shins. It was just incredibly funny. Hitoshi groaned and covered his eyes with his hand. This was humiliating. He stood up to leave when he felt a tug at his sleeve. He looked down to see Midoriya, pulling puppy eyes. Hitoshi tried to look away, but he couldn't. Did Midoriya have a secret quirk? He couldn't resist. He sat back down without saying a word. Midoriya had so many aces up his sleeve. As they ate, Present Mike talked to Hitoshi. So, what's it like at home? He cleared his throat. I'm a foster kid, but I don't really spend time with the rest of my family. I get by. The family looked at him for a moment, processing what he said. Oh no, did he say something embarrassing again? Did he share too much? Maybe he should have lied. That might have helped. Midoriya spoke up. Is everything okay at home? He was quiet, a drastic change from before. It's not ideal, but it's fine. Midoriya looked at him. He saw through the facade and he saw through Shinso. You know, I was treated terribly because I was quirkless. The foster system. It isn't kind to those with weak or villain quirks. That's why I'm eternally grateful for my dad's getting me out. Don't be afraid to ask for help or reach out. Hitoshi nodded silently, taking in what he said. They continued eating the katsudon when the couple began talking. Nothing too exciting, just work and such. Midoriya talked about everyone's quirks, including Shinsu's, and gushed about how cool they were. Soon they all had empty bowls and were quite tired. I'm going down for a nap, Aizawa-sensei stated after putting his bowl in the sink. Present Mike butted back. It's almost 8 p.m. You'll F up your sleep schedule even more. Aizawa-sensei was closing the bedroom door. You can't stop me, so join me. Hitoshi and Midoriya watched as Present Mike sighed and followed into the bedroom. The two stared at each other before laughing at what just went down. You know, Aizawa-sensei seriously is going to mess up his sleeping by taking a nap now. Midoriya chuckled. It was already bad before, just a trait of his. My dad just tries to stop the bad sleeping as best as he can. Speaking of time and all, I think I should get going, it's kind of late. Oh, of course. And Shinso, I'd like to hang out more. You're a really cool dude. Midoriya smiled his bright, genuine smile. Yeah, you too. I'll see you tomorrow at school then? Midoriya nodded, and Shinso left. Izuku walked into his parents' room to find the two sitting on the bed, reading. They looked up at him, curiously. I've got a plan. The two sighed. Izuku saying that he has a plan is usually nothing but trouble. You get on Shinsu's good graces and adopt him. Shoyuta responded first. We are not adopting another kid. Do we even have room for that? Yeah. Just change the office and book. It's a room for him. And come on. The kid is suffering in the foster care system. I can't let this happen to another kid. Shoyuta pinched the bridge of his nose and sighed. We'll think about it. He saw Izuku visibly shake. But don't get your hopes up. No promises. Izuku stopped shaking. All right, thank you for thinking about it for me, and he left. When he closed the door, Shoyuta looked at Hizashi and sighed again. We're going to end up adopting him, aren't we? Yeah, well, that was a given at dinner and you know it. He closed his eyes tightly. I'm going to need so much coffee after this. Only guys, I am figuring out how this works. Izuku was excited, his first heroics lesson. He was waiting for this class to happen, excited that his dreams were attainable, excited that he was going to learn from a great pro. He was practically bouncing in his chair when the large door to the classroom was slammed open. His heart dropped to his stomach as he heard a flamboyant voice declare, I am here. Izuku froze. His bouncing stopped as the number 1 hero practically pranced into the room. His classmates lit out around him, chattering about how the real top hero was teaching their class. He was in his Silver Age costume. Izuku would be geeking out about the hero. He should have been, but instead he was forcing a panic attack down. Memories of that day, the day his dreams were crushed, when he forced himself down those steps and back home. When he walked to the edge a month later, willing to leave this world behind in hopes of a better one. His hands shook, but he gripped them together into a fist, knuckles white with the force. Izuku did everything in his power to not look at All Might. The emotions he felt were too much to handle. This was exposure therapy, but on the last stage instead of the first. Sharp breaths, in through his nose and out through the mouth, practicing his mindfulness as best as he could. Here we have your hero outfits, designed by you and brought into the world by the support course. Put them on and meet at ground beta. Izuku tuned in for the last part as rows of cases appeared near his side of the classroom. He stood up, his brain noise making everything else quiet. As he walked to grab his case, he felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to face Shinso. "Hey, you don't look too great, are you okay?" He looked genuinely concerned for Izuku. He put on a weak, fake smile. "Yeah, just a little nervous." He felt Shinsu's hand hesitate before leaving his shoulder, and Izuku kept walking. As they changed, Izuku felt some stares as he strapped on his weapons. It made sense, though, not many kids have an electric pole and a knife on them. During the months leading up to the entrance exam, Izuku worked with both Tsukachi and Shoyuta on how to use a knife. Things like where to cut and how to stay safe were drilled into him. Along with that and the combat training, he found using an extendable metal pole that acted like a taser on each end was extremely useful. He had both close-range and mid-range weapons, but for a while was stuck on what he should have for long range. On a whim, his dad offered to let him try his capture weapon. When Izuku first tried it, using it was almost second nature. He hadn't found any weapon that was this easy for him to use before, and this was a shock. It was decided that night he was to have his own capture weapon. He pulled the weapon over his head before promptly leaving for ground beta. He wasn't the first one there. Uraraka was there along with Momo and Hagakure. He waited for others to get there and avoided looking at All Might as much as he could. His nerves were more in place than they were before, but it was still a mess in his head. Finally, when everyone was there, All Might started talking again. "Today we will be working on battle training. You all will be working on indoor anti-personnel training. You all will be split off into villains and heroes, then paired off 2v2 against each other." Everyone was chatting now. They would be fighting against each other and finally get a good grasp on their quirks. When they were all paired, he was with Shinso as heroes against Ida and Uraraka as the villains. Unfortunately, they were the first group up. None of this was helping Izuku's nerves. They got up to the building and waited for the timer to start. "Shinso, they don't know what your quirk is. If we can catch them all off guard, we have a better chance at winning this." Shinso nodded before he continued. "Ida can run really fast and has a lot of power in his legs. Uraraka can make things have zero gravity or float. You find the room with the weapon in it and I'll face off whoever they send my way." Before Shinso could respond, the timer had begun. The pair rushed in, searching for the weapon the opponents. Shinso broke away in another direction when Izuku heard a loud, "Release!" He looked above him, briefly, before jumping and rolling into the hallway next to him. He felt the ground shake as a bunch of debris fell to the ground. He walked out of the hallway cautiously, seeing Uraraka slightly breathing. He took this opportunity to use his capture weapon, shooting it toward her, wrapping her up and bringing her to him. She struggled against it, protesting and demanding to be let go. Izuku, of course, didn't let her go, but grabbed the capture tape and tied around her wrists. He released her. "Sorry for that, anything to win, right?" Uraraka pouted slightly. "Yay, I get it. You're lucky you have those weapons." He smiled slightly before pressing on his earpiece. "Shinso, I got Uraraka. Have you found the weapon?" Static came through. "Yes, Ida's monologuing right now. It's the center of the 5th floor." "Alright, stay put, I'll be there soon." Hitoshi stood around the corner, trying his best not to laugh. "Ida's a good guy, but him acting like a villain? It was too much. He muttered to himself before declaring, "I am the ultimate evil." That was it. Hitoshi started laughing, compromising his position. "So you've come, Shinso?" he declared. Hitoshi straightened and walked into the room. Even without Midoriya here, victory was easy. He smiled maliciously. "Tell me, villain, are you really cut out for this?" Ida's eyes widened through the helmet and opened his mouth to answer, but his eyes went blank instead. "Hold out your arms." Ida did as he commanded, and Hitoshi tied the tape around his wrists. When that was completed, Midoriya got to the room and All Might's voice came through the speakers, causing Midoriya to visibly wince. "Well done, hero team. You restrained the villains and safely got the weapon. Well done." Hitoshi let up his control over Ida, who blinked many times and looked around at his surroundings. What happened?" He smiled. "You lost. It's time to head back to the other students." Toshinori was shocked. This kid didn't use his quirk during the exercise, he relied on weapons. He looked so similar, but he wasn't a fan. In fact, he did everything in his power to avoid looking at Toshinori. His train of thought was broken when the door opened and all the students started talking. They asked Midoriya where he learned how to use the capture weapon Aizawa had, and what Shinso's quirk was. Shinso spoke first. "Mine's called brainwash. I can control people's actions when they speak to me." Midoriya spoke next. "Well, a couple months ago I needed weapons if I were to be a hero. I trained with knives and learned how to wield the staff, but my dad gave me the capture weapon and it just kinda worked." "Hold on. He said dad in reference to the capture weapon. He really should have read through the student profiles before this. Midoriya was Aizawa's kid? Kaminari's voice spoke louder than the rest. "I think it's so cool that you can be a hero without a quirk." His head jerked to the crowd of students. "Yeah, you're so manly." Kirishima fist bumped Midoriya as the color in Toshinori's face drained. Midoriya was the kid on the roof all those months ago. He was the victim of the sludge villain. He asked him if he could be a hero without a quirk, and Toshinori told him no. Izuku stretched as the bell rang. He received a message that he wouldn't have lessons this afternoon because of a meeting with the staff, so he grabbed his bag to head out. He was stopped by Ida and Uraraka. Uraraka spoke first. "Midoriya, you were super cool during the exercise today." Ida nodded. "You and Shinso are both forces to be reckoned with. Your win was well deserved." Excitedly, "Hey, do you and Shinso want to walk with Ida and I?" Uraraka looked at him and Shinso, who stopped at the sound of his name. Izuku smiled. "Of course, Shinso?" He sighed. "Sure thing." The four of them walked along, chatting about the heroics class, the food and everything. Izuku had managed to avoid Katsuki during lunch again, and was eternally thankful. He was lost in thought when he bumped into someone. He stepped back and started apologizing when he looked up. Not again. He bumped into Katsuki. Once again, thinking about avoiding him, and he ends up running into him. "God, do you hate me?" His group all stared at him and Katsuki, remembering clearly how things went down in the cafeteria yesterday. Katsuki growled, "What the F are you doing, Deku?" Izuku gulped. "I'm so sorry, Katsuki. I wasn't paying attention, and it's all my fault, I know. I'm so sorry." He bowed low, looking at the ground, praying for this to end. He saw Katsuki's leg rise to kick him in the gut, but a firm hand pressed down on the top of his thigh. He heard Ida's strict voice. "I'm sorry, but I do not tolerate violence. Especially toward a friend. I ask that you lower your leg." Katsuki spat. "What's it to you for eyes? And Deku having friends? What a load of bullshit." Next, it was Shinso's voice. "Do you really want a repeat of yesterday happening?" He heard a grunt from Katsuki as he lowered his leg and walked away from the group. Izuku had been holding his breath and exhaled shakily. He stood up to see many concerned faces looking at him. Well, this was new. He took a deep breath. "It's all right, guys. I'm fine." They stood and waited for their trains, Ida and Uraraka leaving first. When they left, Izuku turned to Shinso. "Would it be all right for you to hang out again today? I'm sorry if that's selfish, but today was rough and I'm told that talking about it helps, And I'm sorry again, but I don't know, I thought maybe asking you was a good idea, but now I realize it wasn't, and God, I feel terrible and dash. It's okay. I'll come over and you can tell me about it. Izuku fought back tears. Thanks. They were silent on the train and on the walk to the apartment. When they arrived, Izuku kicked off his shoes and tossed his bag onto the floor before laying on the couch. Tears started forming as the buildup of stress from today fell apart. Izuku felt the couch dip and opened his eyes to see Shinso sitting on the couch next to him. He quickly sat up and tried to stop crying. Needless to say, it didn't work. Fair warning, I'm not good at this kind of stuff. But, can you tell me why you're upset? He sniffled and started with a shaky voice. Seeing All Might gave me a panic attack. I did my best to shove it down and out, but it didn't help in the long run. Seeing him just reminds me that he's everything I'm not. He has an amazing quirk, people who love him. He never cries and he's strong. I'll never be anything like him. His voice was breaking as he voiced his thoughts. They hurt more when you say them out loud. And he told me I could never be a hero. Who am I to defy the top hero? Who am I, a quirkless kid who still wants to die, to try and do the impossible? Shinso pulled his head into his chest gently and held him, causing him to cry harder at his kindness. Katsuki always reminded me that I'd always be nothing, that I'd always be better off dead. My own FNG parents left me because I'm quirkless, leaving me to be abused emotionally and physically for years at home and at school. I'm nothing, that's who I am. I'm just a quirkless Deku with no use. I'm better off dead. Shinso pulled him away and looked into Izuku's eyes. No. You are not better off dead. You have two loving parents now and you have friends. People will miss you. Don't ever compare yourself to others. You are better than almost everyone I've met. So please, stay for us. Stay for yourself and the amazing hero you'll inevitably become. He let go of his grip and Izuku hugged him as he cried. He cried for a while, letting it all out. Finally, he fell asleep. Shoyuta walked into the apartment to see two sets of shoes and peered over to see the unruly lavender hair of his student. He walked over to see Izuku's eyes shut, puffy and red, leaning on Shinso. Shinso was also asleep, leaning his head on top of Izuku's. In other circumstances, he'd take a picture of the pair as future blackmail, but let them be. Izuku appeared to have been crying, and Shinso was there for it. Hizashi came through the door soon after, Shoyuta shushing him to let the boys rest. They walked into the bedroom and carefully closed the door. So, what's up with that? Hizashi asked curiously as he dressed into his civilian clothes. Shoyuta sighed, changing as well. Izuku's eyes were puffy from crying. I wouldn't be surprised if it was because All Might taught the heroics lesson today. Hizashi stopped. Are you effing serious? Izuku hasn't seen All Might and we did our best to not mention it to him, he face-palmed. We didn't tell him that All Might would be teaching at UA. He sighed before sitting on the bed. Are we terrible parents? Shoyuta walked over to him. No, but we probably could have done better. We don't know how bad this is. He could be reverting to when you found him. What happens then? What if he tries again but nobody's there to save him? Hizashi's eyes were tearing up and Shoyuta sat next to him, giving him a kiss on the forehead and a long hug. We'll be there for him. It's going to be okay. Hitoshi woke up to the smell of rice and fish. He felt a weight on his chest and shoulder and saw that Midoriya was passed out. Gently, he pulled out his phone and saw the time. It was almost 6. How long were they asleep for? Midoriya soon stirred, probably from the cooking in the kitchen, and opened his eyes. He looked at Shinso before jerking off of him, apologizing profusely. Hitoshi just laughed. It's okay, I woke up a few minutes before you, so don't even worry about it. It smells like Aizawa-sensei's cooking up something though. He heard a response from the kitchen. Glad to hear you boys are awake. Hizashi and I didn't want to wake you, but dinner has to get cooked. Shinso, I take it you're staying for dinner again? I don't want to impose again. I'd feel terrible. He laughed. It's all right. Don't worry about it. Hitoshi and Midoriya both got up and stretched. While the positions they fell asleep in weren't terrible, it didn't stop any soreness. He looked at Midoriya. Do you feel better after talking and taking a nap? Midoriya looked back at him and smiled. I feel a lot better, thank you. Seriously. The four of them ate dinner, talking about general topics, present Mike being as insane as he normally is, and Hitoshi left for back home when they were done. He got into bed, happy he was able to help and happy that he felt like he belonged somewhere. Hitoshi went to bed thinking that the following days would be normal. It was during the summer when he was training that his parents brought it up. Sitting at the table, doing some summer prep, Shoyuta asked, "Thoughts on weapon training, Izuku?" His pencil stopped halfway through writing the function, air, what? His dad didn't look up from the book he was reading, weapon training. Like getting you a gun or knife. Stuff like that. He said it so dismissively, as if allowing a kid to open carry wasn't a big deal. I'm passing on a firearm, not a fan of those. Actually, I'm not a fan of violence in general, why do I even need a weapon? Shoyuta sighed. Because, and I love you, most heroes already have weapons. Their quirks are their weapons, and when you don't have you supplement with the standard stuff. I know a few people able to help train you, but I won't force you. Izuku thought about it for a moment. It does make sense to have a weapon, he's right there, but violence. The damage, the pain, everything was negative. He forced down memories of the play, guns. No good in reflecting on the past. As much as I hate using them, I'm willing to learn. Before he could reply, Hizashi waltzed into the room. What's this about weapon training? Are we getting Braven on this? Dismissively, Shoyuta replied, yeah, I'm thinking him and Puma on it. Don't you think she'll scare Izuku? She's really tall and intimidating. Izuku'll handle himself just fine. And she loves kids, so it all works out. Izuku, still sitting at the table, was at a loss. They were talking about the hair hero, Mr. Brave, and the punishing hero, Red Puma. Brave used his hair as a weapon. It's insane how powerful he is. He can do both long-range and close-ranged attacks, using his hardened hair as his weapon. Does he have to pluck it out directly, or can he just cut it off? Will any hair work, or is it only from his scalp? Will he go bald from all the plucking, or does his body have natural countermeasures? Then there was Red Puma. God, she was tall. Clocking in at somewhere near 6 feet 10 inches, she was also just built. With red skin and menacing horns on her hair, she has long black hair and white eyes with no pupils. Her quirk is purely aesthetic, but she's extremely strong. She could bench press all might with ease, not even close to her 1 rep max. She would be teaching him? She would crush him. She's known for brutally taking down villains with a single hit. Almost none have stood against her for over half a minute. Does her strength come from the quirk, or is it just her natural metabolism? How is... His thoughts and mutterings as it appeared were cut by Hizashi. Izuku, it's fine. Puma's really nice, I promise. And you'll be able to talk to them about their quirks soon. So don't go and mutter now. Izuku, I know you aren't a fan of using weapons, but even heroes with insane quirks have them, if only as a backup. Sometimes you can't always rely on brute strength. Izuku nodded. I get that. When do I start training? Shoyuta hummed. Probably later this week, depending on when they can both teach you. Don't stress it, we'll let you know. He went back to reading his book and Izuku turned back to his paper, only to find it covered in scribbled writing from his muttering. He sighed before recycling the paper and grabbing a new one, starting the function over again. The next day, he found a note on the counter when he went to get breakfast. It read, Izuku, your father and I have business. You're meeting with Red Puma today. Meet with her at noon at the address listed below. Love, Hizashi the better dad. The last part was slightly crossed out, making him chuckle before taking a picture of the address. It was 8 a.m., so after getting a light breakfast he went for a run. He stepped inside the sliding glass doors, glad to be out of the heat. The address his parents gave led him to Puma's agency, and it was surprisingly bland. Not too much decoration, just a few plants that looked like they were on the verge of death and some empty chairs. He stepped up to the counter and saw a small woman with a headset who looked up at him. Bluntly, who are you, kid? He straightened. I'm Izuku Midoriya. I'm supposed to see Red Puma at noon. She's waiting for you on the 5th floor. The door directly on your right. Take the elevator. The woman said this curtly while looking back at her computer. He hesitated for a moment before going to the elevator. When he arrived at the 5th floor, he stepped out and looked to his right, seeing an open door that led to a sort of small gym. Why they would put a gym on the 5th floor, he'll never know. Inside waited the giant of a woman, Red Puma. She looked down on him, arms folded. Her mouth curved into a malicious smile. So you're the little pipsqueak eraser sent for torture. Unfortunately, Izuku squeaked. When he did this, she looked at him for a moment before dissolving into laughter. Between her gasps for air, I'm sorry, I called you a pipsqueak, and you squeaked. Izuku stood there shocked. I'm sorry. Puma inhaled deeply, exhaling out her laughter. No, it's fine. I'm super tall and scary, so I like to prank kids, but you caught me off guard. Everyone tells me I'm terrible at being scary off duty, so it was bound to happen. So could Red Puma at your service. Throwing away his nerves, I'm Izuku Midoriya, I'm here for weapons training? She snorted, Nah, not with me. Brave specializes in weapons, not me. I'm hand-to-hand combat. Weapons and sheet are important, but knowing how to fight is of equal importance in hero work. My goal, by the end of today, is to have you barely able to move. She put on a slightly wild smile. So get ready for me to kick your butt, Midoriya. Remember how it was noon when he got there? Well, it was 8 p.m. when he left. Puma reached her goal. It hurt to move his head to cross the street. Interestingly enough, she's really nice. Sure, she kicked his butt pretty badly, but she was nice about it. In a way. She didn't laugh at him when he messed up, instead she corrected him. He learned the basics of throwing a punch, a good kick, how to predict someone's moves by their body language. He was forced to take mental notes of everything she taught him, writing it all down into his notebook on the way home. When he finally stepped through the door of his apartment, he dropped everything and fell onto the couch. His dads looked him over, Hisashi visibly trying to not laugh. So, Puma got you good, eye? He snickered and Izuku threw daggers with his eyes. Shoyuda knocked Hisashi on the head with his book before closing it and standing, Hisashi pouting and rubbing his head. I'll get you some medicine and bandages. I'll also grab some ice packs from the freezer for the bruises. You're going to see her every other day for combat training, and the days you don't see her will be trying out new weapons. Sound good? Izuku grumbled his response at Shoyuda, who took it as a yes. They spent the rest of the evening treating the injuries as Izuku talked about everything he learned. Izuku knew of being sore. It was common for him to be sore, but that had nothing on how he felt the next morning. He woke up and when he tried to move, his body screamed at him. Forcing himself through the pain, he got up and slowly started stretching. As he went into his downward dog, he stretched his heels and thought about Mr. Brave. Little was known about the hero. He used his hair as a weapon and seemed smart enough, but there's more to a person than just that. He pulled himself into his next stretch positions, contemplating. He always preferred to know who he was dealing with. It helps when talking and being around someone. Knowing their personality allows Izuku to mold himself to fit perfectly. Unfortunately, that wasn't an option here and Izuku had to go in blind. He walked into the kitchen, going straight for the medicine cabinet. He grabbed his regular medication and the ibuprofen. He shook out 2 and some water before taking it all together. He sat at the table, greeting his dads and eating his breakfast. They talked some about preparations at school and regular patrols. Nothing too exciting. When Izuku finished his breakfast, he went for a jog, hoping to warm his muscles up enough to stretch more. At noon, he was expected to be at Mr. Brave's agency, and he was. He pushed through the doors of the agency and was greeted with bright decorations in the waiting room. Plants were littered about, bright abstract paintings on the walls, and even a large fish tank was on the far side of the room. It didn't really feel like a pro-heroes agency, but more of an inviting doctor's office. He walked over to the reception area and was greeted by a young woman. Hello, Izuku Midoriya, I presume? Yes, ma'am. Great. Walk through those doors and it'll be the room at the end of the hall. Mr. Brave will be waiting there for you. She gestured to the doors and Izuku bowed slightly before walking through the doors. Sure enough, at the end of the hall was an opened door leading to a small dojo. The walls were lined with various melee weapons, ranging from a small knife to a large bow staff. When he arrived, Mr. Brave turned to greet him, smiling. "Hello. You must be Midoriya, then?" Izuku squeaked, "Yes, sir." Mr. Brave started laughing. Why did both he and Puma laugh? "You are just as uptight as Puma said you were." "I'm sorry." Brave looked at him, stopping his laughter. "Oh, don't apologize. That doesn't do anything in this scenario. But enough of that, we have to find you some weapons." Oh, and finding weapons they did. His arsenal of weapons was insane. The variety of blades, projectiles, and impact weapons were out of this world. It was also mildly intimidating. If a villain broke in, they'd either be very lucky or very unfortunate. Mr. Brave appeared to have some level of proficiency with each item, teaching Izuku the basics of each type of weapon. All the weapons were the training versions, meaning they weren't lethal. Still, Brave taught him the rules of safety, spending over an hour working on safety procedures alone. After that, Mr. Brave decided they were to try out some more dangerous weapons, ones he didn't carry at the agency. So where are we headed?" Izuku asked, trying to keep up with his pace on the street, simultaneously trying to avoid the stairs. Without looking back, the police station. They have a special area for training the weapons I don't have. Don't worry, the person supervising is nice. That wasn't what Izuku was worried about. He was more so concerned about what kind of weapons he'd be trying. If they were guns, his thoughts were interrupted. "We're here. He should be waiting for us inside." The pair walk inside, finding a rather worn-looking man in a white button-down and black slacks. He introduces himself. "I'm Detective Tsukachi, you must be Midoriya." Shyly he nods. Mr. Brave starts, "Is everything ready for us?" Gesturing for them to follow as he starts walking, Tsukachi replies, "Yes, just follow me back here and we'll get you set up." After a few turns, they were near the back of the station when they were presented with a pair of doors, with signs of caution and protective ear/eyewear required. Tsukachi turned to them. "Don't worry about the signs, nobody's using this besides us today." He pushed through the doors, revealing a clean indoor shooting range. The wall farthest from them was lined with firearms, from pistols to assault rifles. His heart rate quickened, seeing the array of weapons. He tried his best to shove it down, calming himself. He could do this. It would be okay. We're going to start out with something small, once we've covered gun safety. We'll go from there. That sound good? Izuku nodded, and listened as Tsukachi explained gun safety. Soon after, he found himself with ear protection on, standing at a booth with SIG Sauer P226 in his hands, aiming to shoot. His heart was pounding in his ears, willing his hands to stop shaking. Slowly, he turned the safety off, aimed for the target 6 meters away, placed his finger on the trigger, and fired. Even with the protection on, he heard the shot and felt the small recoil. He had the presence of mind to turn the safety back on before dropping the handgun, throwing off the ear muffs as memories flooded back to him. Following Katsuki, Izuku could see him showing off his new toys. His birthday was the weekend prior. Him turning his relatives had gotten him a rather dangerous gift, an airsoft assault rifle. Of course, Katsuki was eager to try it out. He and the rest of the neighborhood kids followed him to the park, as he stopped everyone trailing after him. Ahead, there were unsuspecting pigeons. The airsoft, already full of BBs, was aimed at one. Katsuki pulled the trigger, hitting one on the wing. The kids cheered as he stood, looking full of himself. The pigeons settled down after a moment, looking for bits of food on the ground. Izuku, who was previously behind everyone, figured out what had happened. He squirmed his way past the group to stand in front of Katsuki at point-blank range, holding out his arms. "I won't let you hurt those poor birds." Katsuki growled, "Get out of my way, Deku, or I'll shoot ya." He hesitated. Katsuki wouldn't actually shoot him, right? Wrong. When he stood his ground, Katsuki shot his chest. The pain was immediate. Izuku fell to the ground, holding his chest. The impact hurt like hell, and was most definitely going to leave a bruise. The rest of the kids laughed at him, and Katsuki stared down at him. Shakily, Izuku got up and held his arms out again. Katsuki stared at him, this time in disbelief, before it turned into anger. He held the gun up again, insinuating that he wasn't afraid to shoot again. Again, when he stayed standing, Katsuki shot him. This time near his hip, in a tender spot. This happened a few more times, lasting until Katsuki got bored and the kids stopped cheering. When they were done, Izuku laid on the ground. He had multiple small welts, a few of them broke his skin. He struggled to walk back home, grateful that his parents never questioned his injuries. His senses returned to him. He realized Mr. Brave kneeling in front of him, asking him something he couldn't hear. Tsukachi stood a few paces away, on the phone talking to someone. His hearing slowly tuned in, finally understanding that Mr. Brave was asking if he was okay. He nodded, seeing the relief flood through Mr. Brave. "Kid, Midoriya, what happened?" He curled in on himself on the cold ground, trying to avoid eye contact. One moment he was attempting to shoot a firearm, the next he was tossed back into his childhood. Now, he sat on the floor, hugging his knees to his chest. Softly, "I don't know." He looked down and away from Mr. Brave, not wanting to see his face. "That's okay. Tsukachi called your dad's. Shoyuta will be here soon." "It's okay." Izuku felt himself release some tension. His dad being here was probably for the best. Not long after his dad arrived. He slammed through the doors, causing Izuku to look up. His dad looked around before locking eyes with Izuku, then rushing toward him. He got on his knees and pulled Izuku into a tight hug. "Oh God, Izuku, are you okay?" Everything pent up in him broke like a dam. He started crying into his dad's chest, broken sentences escaping him. "Katsuki, since I don't like them. I can't." "Shoo," his dad cooed, "it's okay. You don't need to tell me what happened until you're ready." His dad ended up taking him home after that, promising to explain to both Tsukachi and Mr. Brave what happened. When they got home, Izuku went straight to bed, exhausted both physically and mentally. Izuku woke up in a slight haze. Phantom wounds from his childhood pricked at his skin, then feeling the very real soreness in his body. He got out of bed and walked to the kitchen, where he was promptly attacked by a very concerned Hizashi. He yelped as he was held up in a tight hug as Hizashi spoke to him frantically. "Oh my God, Izuku, are you alright? I didn't want to wake you up so I let you be, but I was so scared when Brave and Sho told me what happened. I was worried that you weren't okay or got hurt, but you weren't, but you were still freaking out, and oh my God." Amazingly, he said this all in one breath. Shoyuta stepped in. "Zashi, put the kid down. He just woke up." Reluctantly, yeah, you're right." Hizashi then let him down and out of the hug, allowing Izuku to both breathe and see the faint shine of tears in his eyes. Izuku was, understandably, confused at his concern. He started to question, what? He cut himself off as he was rudely reminded of the events the day prior. He was at the station with the detective and Brave, then he shot a firearm, then everything went black before he got a front row seat to his trauma fest. He was snapped back to reality when he felt a hand on his shoulder, shaking him slightly. He blinked a few times before looking up at Shoyuta. "Kid, are you alright? You spaced out for a minute there." He nodded. "Yeah, I'm fine now, thank you." He looked away, feeling his face grow hot with embarrassment. "I'm sorry. For the trouble I caused yesterday. I must have freaked you guys out." He heard Hizashi start, "No dash," but was cut off by his other dad. "Yes, you scared us." Izuku flinched at his bluntness, "But I don't blame you. Honestly, I should have known better than to put you in that situation without asking you how you felt about it." He took a sharp breath. "Tsukachi said you were muttering yesterday, and that you had your mouth open like you were screaming, but no sound came out. Now, I don't want to push you at all, but when you're ready, could you tell us what happened?" Izuku stood for a second. "I think I can tell you about it now, if that's all right." Shoyuta smiled. "Of course it's all right, Izuku." The three of them sat on the couch, sandwiching Izuku between them. He started slowly, recounting how he was nervous about going to the station, but tried to avoid thinking about it. Then he found himself holding the handgun and firing, and soon after he didn't know where he was. He spoke about the incident with Katsuki, feeling both his dads tense up as he recounted everything. After his story, he got his senses back bit by bit before his dads arrived. Hizashi leaned over, holding his head in his hands. God, Izuku. I'm so sorry. I'm so effing sorry. Shoyuta draped his arm around them, holding the two closer. We messed up, Izuku. I'm sorry. That struck a chord in Izuku. Nobody had ever said, I'm sorry, and meant it, let alone admitting to messing up. I forgive you guys. I didn't tell you, so I don't blame you at all. Hizashi looked up at him through his hands. Really? Yeah. For the second time that morning he was attacked into a bear hug by Hizashi. He ended up on top of both Izuku and Shoyuta, crushing them. Well, crushing Izuku. Shoyuta was probably fine, knowing how tough he is. Shoyuta slipped himself and Izuku out from underneath Hizashi, Izuku now able to breathe again. He laughed, despite having a really tough conversation with his parents, he laughed knowing that they cared. He laughed at Hizashi, who now was sitting up and looking extremely confused. He stopped laughing, but pulled Hizashi up and into a group hug. They didn't question him and all he said was, thank you. After the family bonding session, he decided to still go back to Puma's agency. She, of course, heard what happened, and also swept him into a bone-breaking hug. Izuku was starting to see a pattern. Not long after that, they continued the training. It was the evening after he got his acceptance letter. Izuku had continued his training with both Puma and Brave, finding that a staff and multiple knives were in his favor. The staff they practiced with was supposed to have taser-like ends on it, allowing him to effectively stop most opponents. The knives were for causing a distraction in his opponent. Cutting minor cuts on a person will typically stop them for a moment, making an opening to take them out. He was, originally, missing a long-range weapon, but when his dad joked about letting him try his capture weapon, it all went downhill from there. He seriously took to the weapon faster than his dad claimed he did, and it wasn't even tailored to him yet. All of the weapons training with both Brave and Shoyuta, the hand-to-hand combat with Puma, the general exercise he had been maintaining, it all led up to where he is now. Well, currently he was sitting at the table, posting on a hero forum he frequented. His concentration, however, was broken when he heard an extremely obnoxious knock at the door. Hizashi got up, muttering something to himself, why are they here so dim and early? And opened the door. He heard loud greetings, exchanged between his dad and, wow, Puma. She wasn't alone, though, after she stepped in, Brave came into view behind her. Izuku, Puma said loudly, rushing at him with her arms open. Izuku squeaked before being pulled into a hug from her, him tapping her back to try and signal that he was going to KO soon. Brave pulled her off of him, clapping a hand on his back. We heard you got in, kid. We're here to celebrate. He wiped the fast-forming tears in his eyes. Thank you, Brave. Hizashi spoke. No hero names when we're at home, Zuku. Puma's eyes lit up. Right? I'm Mitsu Fujimori. I'm Haruto Nakamura. No, Nakamura-san said. Oh, all right. Fujimori-san's face turned into a wide grin and exclaimed, let's get this thing started. They spent the evening talking while Shoyuta cooked for them. Several times both Fujimori-san and Nakamura-san commented on him cooking, expressing their surprise that he, well, could. It was really nice, seeing her and Hizashi bantering back and forth. Nakamura-san tried talking business with Shoyuta, but he would shut him down quickly after, stating that business is prohibited when partying. When the evening was spent and both heroes left, Izuku slumped onto the couch. Lazily he said, thank you guys. It meant a lot that they were here. Ah, Hizashi cooed before pulling Izuku into a hug. Of course we would. You mean the world to us. Izuku pressed harder into the hug, so grateful that he has parents like them. He fell asleep sometime that night on the couch, but woke up in his bed. Izuku stretched while yawning before getting ready for the day. As he stepped out of his room, instead of seeing breakfast on the table like usual, both his dads stood, leaning on the counter. Shoyuta spoke first. No time for breakfast, we have to go somewhere. Get in the car. He let out a breathy laugh. What? Why dash? Hizashi snapped at him. Don't question my husband. Just get in the DMN car. This stopped Izuku from speaking anymore when he got in the car. They didn't speak a word, sitting in an uncomfortable silence. As they drove, The scenery became more and more familiar to Izuku. He tried to bury his doubts with his hopes, reassuring himself that they weren't headed where he thought they were. He felt the car come to a stop. Shoyuta turned it off, getting out of the car and opening Izuku's door. Izuku was shocked. He didn't know what to do or say. He looked out the now open car door, Izumi Ishida, his previous foster mother, meeting his gaze. After a moment, he felt himself get pulled out of the car by the collar of his shirt. Stunned, he saw Shoyuta looking at him with cold, disapproving eyes. Izuku tried to force his tears from surfacing, but promptly failed when he asked his question, voice breaking, "Why?" Hisashi spoke, his regular friendly voice gone, replaced with stone. "Because nobody could love someone like you, a quirkless, useless Deku." Weakly, he turned to Shoyuta. "Dad. I'm not your dad. Nobody could love someone like you." Izuku fell to the ground, curling on his side, trying to tune out the voices. They chanted at him what both his dads had told him. "Nobody could love someone like you. Nobody 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 could love someone like you." Izuku woke up in a cold sweat, curled on his side and breathing. He looked around in his dark room, and without checking the time he went to his parents' room. Quietly, he walked over to Shuta's side, tapping his shoulder to wake him up. His eyes opened, locking onto Izuku. He sat up quickly. "Izuku? Is everything all right?" He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Shoyuta looked at him with confusion, then understanding, lifting up the blanket as an invitation. He crawled into bed, hugging Shoyuta. Without saying a word, they went back to sleep, Izuku feeling some sense of safety. He woke up again, for real this time, somehow in the middle of his parents. It became painfully apparent that Hisashi has no concept of personal space as his leg was draped across Izuku. He looked for his phone, only to remember the dream, no, nightmare, and crawling into bed with his parents. He did his best to slip out from between them, stopping when he heard a sluggish, "Zuku? You okay now?" He turned around to see Shoyuta, now half awake, much less alert than he was the previous night. He smiled, "Yeah, thanks Dad."